are these people?
Author and activist, Canadian activist, you can see from the flag there, Yves Engler is spending the night in jail for speaking out against Zionism after prosecutors objected to his release. Another hearing is scheduled for tomorrow, but even then, his freedom is not guaranteed. We need to keep up the pressure. And this was on Thursday, all right, the 20th. Friday was the 21st. So what had happened was Yves got arrested. Why? Because he turned himself in. I'm going to bring the whole tweet. He turned himself in to Montreal police. He was told that he was going, and this is a 20-minute video. I'm not going to play the whole thing. But effectively, somebody, a Canadian citizen, a Zionist citizen, charged him with harassment. All right. They came to arrest him, to take him in on that charge. And when he posted that he was being arrested for it, they then promised new charges of harassing police and obstructing their work for tweeting it. Crazy. All right. So our friend the dissident, the 307.substack.com, wrote an article about this saying, and he's Canadian, he's from Toronto. So the lawfare campaign against pro-Palestinian speech comes to Canada. Right? Canada is now joining the long list of Western countries to begin criminalizing anti-genocide speech. So he starts by saying, let me blow this up a little bit more. All right. On his website, the Canadian writer and author of the books Canada's Long Fight Against Democracy and Stand on Guard for Whom, A People's History of the Canadian Military, Yves Engler wrote, tomorrow, the Montreal police will arrest me. The reason? He said it's because of his posting to social media against Israel's genocide in Gaza. He received a phone call from a Montreal police officer by the last name of Crivello, who asked him to come downtown to a downtown police station where I will be charged for harassment and indecent communication. He says, a complaint was submitted against me months ago by a legal firm on behalf of racist media personality Dahlia Kurtz. Crivello said I had described Kurtz as a genocide supporter and a fascist on Twitter. Guilty as charged. He is. He noted that on dozens of occasions, I've responded to her racist, violent anti-Palestinian posts on X. Before getting into the free speech issues, let's look at the facts. Dahlia Kurtz is a Canadian influencer who describes herself on her website as an award-winning radio talk show host, international speaker, and syndicated columnist. She's written for mainstream Canadian outlets like National Post. She hosts a radio show on Sirius XM and has over 40,000 followers on X. She is an open and proud supporter of Israel's mass murder campaign in Gaza. For context, Amnesty International has said that Israel is, quote, committing genocide against Palestinians in Gaza and concluded a lengthy report that there is sufficient basis to conclude that Israel has committed and is continuing to commit genocide against Palestinians in the occupied Gaza Strip. And you can now add the West Bank to that now that they've started to send tanks in as of this morning. The report found that, quote, Israel has carried out acts prohibited under the Genocide Convention with the specific intent to destroy Palestinians in Gaza. Irrefutable. Human Rights Watch similarly concluded that, quote, Israeli authorities are responsible for the crime against humanity of extermination and for acts of genocide by, quote, inflicted conditions of life calculated to bring about the destruction of part of the population in Gaza by intentionally depriving of Palestinian civilians there of adequate access to water, most likely resulting in thousands of deaths. Also food and supplies, medical supplies. The International Court of Justice also found that it's plausible that Israel has committed acts that violate the Genocide Convention. What a joke. Of course they have. Kurtz is a strong supporter of a mass murder campaign that the world's top human rights organizations have concluded is a genocide, and the ICJ has concluded is a plausible genocide. Calling her a genocide supporter is not harassment and indecent communications. It's a fact. Furthermore, she herself has engaged in some truly vile rhetoric on social media and on her Twitter page, where she sports over 41,000 followers. For starters, she has repeatedly engaged in atrocity denial, minimizing the well-documented fact that Israel is intentionally starving civilians in Gaza. She shared a video to social media of Palestinians celebrating the ceasefire in Gaza and wrote, quote, "Super energetic starving children in Gaza dancing in their cozy, clean and warm sweaters whilst clearly freezing to death. The adults choreographing the celebration are their genocided obese parents." Oh my God. In another tweet, she shared a video that purported to show a Palestinian child holding a gun. For context, Israel holds youth military training camps as well, stating, quote, "That kid in Gaza doesn't look malnourished to me. Regular meals supplemented with guns and hate," unquote. Just awful. I would say the same stuff to her that Eve is, by the way. For context, this is propaganda used to deny the well-documented fact that Israel has been deliberately starving civilians in Gaza. The International Criminal Court has issued an arrest warrant against Bibi Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant for the war crime of starvation as a method of warfare. The UN has also said that the Israeli blockade has caused, quote, 1 in 4 people to be starving and 9 out of 10 families in some areas to spend a day and night without food. And we read some of their stories last week. The, quote, integrated food security phase classification also found that the blockade would cause all 2 million people in Gaza to face acute food insecurity, with at least 1 in 4 households facing famine-like conditions. Yep, intentionally. It's called Starvation Plus, and it's a policy of Israel. Yep. Kurtz has also spread fake news to justify civilian casualties in Gaza. On Twitter, she published a fake news story without providing a link, stating, quote, "news," and I don't even want to say this because it's fake news and I don't want to get our channel popped for misinformation, but because it's in support of Israel, it probably wouldn't be. She claimed lyingly that about half of Gaza was aware of and involved in the October 7th massacre. That's ridiculous. Quote, terror,
insane.
Quote, terror network Al Jazeera published a propaganda program about the plan for October 7th with the order, time, and day and time of 6:30 a.m. Instructions were disseminated amongst the innocent civilians of Gaza. Absolute fucking lie. This is clearly propaganda used to justify Israel's mass targeting of civilians in Gaza. It's reminiscent of videos the Israeli government has posted to social media that claim there are no innocent civilians in Gaza, which is also insane because infants are definitely not innocent, right? Israel? Insane.
Mm-hmm.
This is propaganda to justify Israel's targeting of civilians in Gaza, where the Geneva-based human rights organization's Euromed Monitor found that 9 out of every 10 people killed by Israel in Gaza are civilians, and the UN found that 70% of people killed are women and children. The ages most represented among the dead were 5 to 9-year-olds, and 80% of the victims were killed in residential buildings or similar housing, or they were sniped on the street by the IDF. Kurtz also supports the complete ethnic cleansing and annexation of Gaza. In response to Donald Trump's call to take over Gaza and force Palestinians into Jordan, Egypt, or other places, she said, "Goodbye, Gaza Strip. Hello, MAGA Strip." She's also on record saying that Gaza is not a country. Oh, yeah, she's just the worst. All right. So she had a journalist locked up, this cunt. Dahlia Kurtz has also engaged in extreme dehumanizing rhetoric. At one tweet, he called former Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar a rat and tweeted the dead rat of Gaza after he was killed. That's literally what they call people anti-Semites for tweeting about Jews. But she can do it about a Palestinian, and she's just fine. Kurtz has also extended this type of rhetoric to her political opponents. She quoted a clip from the Piers Morgan show where the Israeli intelligence asset Mohad Hassan Yosef called the political commentator Cenk Uygur a parasite for his support of Palestine. And which Cenk doesn't even really support Palestine. He claims he does, but then he supports the Democrats who don't. So he doesn't really. He wants to, but he can't really. He also has repeatedly called for pro-Palestinian protesters to be deported to Gaza, like even though they're American, and she's not, while it was being bombed by Israel. Insane. She once tweeted out, "Now it's time to send all those death-chanting Intifada University students to Gaza." How about we send her to Gaza? How about we send her to the West Bank without any armor or weapons? In response to an anti-Zionist Jewish protest that took place against the genocide in Gaza at Canada's Parliament building, she said, quote, "These quote-unquote Jews love Gaza so much, I have no problem sending them all there with my own money. It's an investment."
No, she won't. She wouldn't.
Nope. In response to a university campus protest against the genocide in Gaza, she said, quote, "They clearly belong together in Gaza." Of all the lawfare campaigns I've covered against pro-Palestine figures, this one has to take the cake for the most ludicrous yet. Yves Engler has criticized a public figure who has denied documented war crimes, spread fake news to justify the murder of civilians, called for the ethnic cleansing of Gaza, called her political opponents parasites, and called to deport her political opponents to Gaza. And for this, he's being arrested for, quote, harassment and indecent communication.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that the Montreal police are going along with this case is truly terrifying. But it's part of a much larger lawfare campaign against those who oppose the genocide in Gaza. Like we've documented well on this show, the UK government has now gone after Richard Medhurst, Richard Barnard, Sarah Wilkinson, Asa Winstanley, and Miko Peled for their reporting and activism on Palestine. Switzerland briefly jailed journalist Ali Abu Nima when he was supposed to give a talk in Palestine in the country. And Germany also issued a warrant for his arrest last April when he gave a speech remotely, in July. Austria has recently joined the British legal case against journalist Richard Medhurst for his reporting on Palestine. This new case against Yves Engler is just the latest development in the growing criminalization of pro-Palestine and anti-genocide speech in the Western world. This is a really good piece I like by the dissident. Support independent media, support our friend the 307.substack.com. I believe he is trying to go full time. He set up a Patreon last week, but you can subscribe here over on Substack as well. He's got paid subs turned on. All right. Who the hell starts her bio with, "I'm a Jew and granddaughter of Holocaust survivors"? Is that the new get out of jail free card? Terrible. Just terrible stuff. So getting back to Yves, here's his tweet the other day. You can't make this up. Initially, the Montreal police accused me of harassing an anti-Palestinian media personality because I posted about Israel's genocide. Now they're charging me for harassing the police for writing about the charges leveled against me. At 9:30 a.m. tomorrow, the Montreal police are set to arrest me. Today, an officer told me they will detain me overnight or until I'm brought before a judge. And guess when they did it? What day of the week? Friday.
Friday.
You know why? Because they can hold him for the whole fucking weekend and he's still sitting in jail right now. Here's the story again. On Tuesday, a police investigator, Crivello, said they were charging me at the behest of anti-Palestinian activist Dahlia Kurtz. The police officer said I had described her as a genocide supporter and fascist on Twitter, which is true. I promptly wrote about the charges, and the Canadian Foreign Policy Institute organized an email letter campaign which saw 2,500 outraged people call on the cops to drop the Kurtz-sponsored charges. Angry at receiving emails right away. Well, here's what happened. Angry at receiving emails and my article, the police were seeking release conditions, barring me from discussing the charges leveled against me. The police are now claiming I'm victimizing them. They're Israeling themselves. Today, a new investigator called to say investigator Crivello feels threatened by my writing about the charges leveled against me.
Oh, it's scary.
The Montreal
words.
the Montreal police will be charging me with intimidation, harassment, harassing communication, and entrave, which is interference, towards Crivello. The police investigator also announced that they will be holding me overnight out of fear that I may relapse. In other words, I might once again write about the absurd charges leveled against me. Guilty as charged. Over the past 24 hours, I've received multiple messages about frivolous cases brought against others opposing genocide. The abuse of police and legal system to target opponents of genocide is a greater problem than I realized. I'm trying to make sense of Kurtz's bizarre bid not to block me on X, but claim I'm harassing her. Perhaps she's trying to monetize her status as a victim of hate. On her site, she writes, quote, "If you want to help save Canada from hate and extremism, please donate by e-transfer to me." After working for She claims that after years of working for media outlets, she's now independent, so she can say the truth. Oh, this sounds like somebody that the song Pull String was written about. All right. This also means my personal security, her personal security, is under constant threat. So you can make a difference. My work is funded solely by your support. Her personal security isn't under threat. Nobody's threatening anything on her security. They called her a fascist genocide supporter and a genocide. I mean, a genocide denier and an Israel supporter. I mean, Jesus Christ. A lawyer is looking into pursuing legal action against Kurtz, but it's the police that really need to be held accountable. The initial charges were an abuse of state authority, and adding new charges for criticizing them is beyond absurd. The Montreal police apparently have no qualms about acting in service of Israel's slaughter in Gaza. More than 100,000 have been killed, and almost everyone has been displaced. About 70% of the buildings are destroyed, and most agricultural land damaged. The police targeting opposition to Israel's crimes is an embarrassment. The particular charges are ridiculous. The notion that someone can publicly attack Palestinians, repeatedly call Canada's prime minister an anti-Semite and supporter of terror, engage in a Conservative Party candidate as a lawyer to convince police to lay charges and authorities to go along with it, simply incredible. Then for police to claim they're being victimized by emails critical of the ridiculous charges, I'm at a loss for words. What parallel universe have we slipped into? Well, it's a Nazi universe, Eve. Please email the Montreal mayor and police chief to demand they drop the charges against Yves Engler. If you're in Montreal, some people will be accompanying him when he is detained in the morning. So he wrote this Wednesday night. He goes Thursday and turns himself in. All right, that's this video here. And again, we're not going to play it.
Drop the charges!
I'll go through it. You know, he's got people around him, and then he gives a speech, and he explains what's happening to him, and then he goes and turns himself in, gets arrested, and they take him away. So then what had happened, Alex Tyrell, who's apparently his friend who's reporting on what's happening, this afternoon at 2:45, and this was, I believe, Thursday on the 20th. This afternoon at 2:45, Yves Engler appeared in court via video link on charges related to his criticisms of a Zionist media personality. The Crown opposed his release without providing a reason. A bail hearing was set for tomorrow, meaning he will spend the night in jail. Engler appeared without his glasses, struggling to see the screen. When asked if he had legal representation, he confirmed that he was represented by lawyer John Philpott, but then cut off mid-sentence when attempting to discuss conditions. When he asked why his release was opposed, the judge dismissed his question, saying it was at the prosecutor's discretion and advised him not to speak. Very Kafkaesque. A not guilty plea was recorded. When Yves tried to ask about his political rights, the judge again cut him off, and he was quickly led out of the room. To support him on his website, please donate, yvesengler.com/donate. All right, I'm going to put that in the chat for everyone. All right, and Unbelievable what's going on here. And he is, again, still in jail for the weekend. I saw on the Gray Zone stream, and Aaron Mate even tweeted out about it. Here, update. Where is it? I could have sworn I saw something where on the 21st or the 22nd, they also reported that he was still in jail. He has not tweeted since. And I don't know if that's because he's afraid he's going to get arrested again, or if he isn't even out of jail yet. But this was the last tweet that, oh, here we go. Yves' father here, providing an update, who is currently detained at Bordeaux jail until at least Monday. Today, the prosecutors refused to free him unless he would agree not to speak publicly about the case, including naming directly or indirectly the influencer who filed the complaint against him. Why should he?
Right.
Yves will have a bail hearing Monday at 9 a.m. He's called for supporters to attend. The hearing will determine whether or not he will be freed pending trial, and if he will be allowed to write in detail about what is happening to him, including naming the complaint and the police officer who have accused him of harassment, even though he's already done that. He has no interest in naming the police officer, but insists that he should be able to name the influencer who regularly publishes hateful anti-Palestinian content online. If you support him, please come to the Palace de Justice at 1 Notre Dame East at room 312 on Monday at 9 a.m. You can also support his work by donating at his website. And this is crazy. I mean, this is crazy town we're at, people. We're taking crazy pills here.
Yep. Am I taking crazy pills?
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills here. For real. Like, what the fuck is going on here? That like we're calling out. Are they going to start suing U.S. citizens for harassing tweets on as well? I mean, that's worrisome. I mean, using lawfare in Canada, they've obviously found some Canadian law. I believe that it's why they're trying to pass a lot of these stop anti-Semitism laws in the United States right now.
Yep.
Okay, to criminalize supporting any Palestinians at all, that they're all of a sudden going to deem any Palestinian whatsoever a terrorist, which is also insane. How is a 6-month-old baby a terrorist? Explain that to me. Square that circle. You go ahead. Other than to say, well, they're going to grow up to terrorize us. Well, why would they possibly do that? What kind of motivation would you be giving them to do that? A 6-month-old baby would have motivation to want to grow up and kill you? Why? I can't imagine. I can't. Well, Desert Mantis. Oh, God. I was killed by a 6-month-old baby once. Well, that is that must be Israel's position. All right. I can't imagine there are other excuses. Yeah, praying for him, and it sucks what's going on there, for sure. Yeah, yvesengler.com/donate if you are able to and of means as well. He certainly is going to need legal support and help to fight this, because he's got the Zionists fighting against him, and we know the Zionists. I used to be one. They love their lawyers. So we get censored for stuff like this. We got demonetized for stuff like this. So please, if you are able to, hook us up somewhere else other than on YouTube. The ways to do that are Cash App, Ko-fi, PayPal, and at innnewsletter.com. You can do so with a one-time, monthly, or even an annual support over at INN Newsletter.
Who are these people?
Meme coins, the Trump administration, and what the fuck is going on? My word. So I've kind of ignored this story. I've laughed about it, but I just figured we really need to at least talk about it on this show a little bit more than just to laugh about it. And I found this thanks to our friend, the Golden Monarch, and we're going to bring one of his articles in a minute. All right.
You are fake news.
No, this is not fake news. This is real.
Wrong.
Thank you. The Trump coin.
Don't be rude.
The Trump coin cometh. So, or how I learned to stop worrying and love the grift.
I'm gonna come.
Like, I want to send this to Jesse Jett because he had a song about how I stopped learning to worry and love the something, you know, as far as that was Dr. Strangelove, I believe.
Yes.
All right. As well as he uses the grift at the end. And it's like such an homage to Jesse. I love it. So this gentleman, Michel de Cryptodamus, doesn't write very much, but they're very active in calling out meme coins and the scam that is crypto all over Substack notes. So he wrote this the day after Trump was inaugurated. You notice January 21st. All right. This wasn't supposed to be my next article. I didn't want to write an article about Trump's meme coins. Unfortunately, after spending a few days watching journalists completely bungle the reporting on what will hopefully go down in history as the most audacious financial scam ever pulled by a president of the United States of America, I felt I should collect what we actually know about what the fuck just happened with this recent onslaught of Trump family-themed pump and dump scams that were so outrageously brazen and immoral that even the crypto bros who love Trump started completely losing their shit on social media. Why hast thou forsaken us in favor of a shitcoin scam? Was the cry heard across all the social media wastes. This is a very entertaining article.
I thought it would be my meme coin wasn't worth anything anymore.
Well, basically,
you know?
He said,
"Why did I buy this and the Hawk Tua coin? Why?"
Well, no, that's not what they're mad about. Do you know how hard it is to make a large majority of the thought leaders in crypto calling anything out as a scam, much less something associated with the Messiah figure who's delivered them from the tyranny of the SEC? What's his name? I will fire. What's his name on day one who resigned before that? All right. Gary Gensler.
Mm-hmm.
This is an industry best described by Hunter S. Thompson's memorable turn of phrase. The crypto industry is a cruel and shallow money trench, a long plastic hallway where thieves and pimps run free and good men die like dogs. Unquote.
Correct.
And that's the good part of the
We
industry.
can stop here. This is backcountry.
The bad part of the industry involves things like fentanyl trafficking, Vladimir Putin, and Hezbollah. Okay, he's not perfect, but okay.
Yes.
Trump has really proven himself to be the GROAT, whatever that is. What is a meme coin? So I figured let's back up a little bit and let's talk about meme coins in general, because there's going to be a bunch about meme coins here tonight. A meme coin is literally just a crypto token, the same thing as something like Tether's USDT, which we've talked a lot about. Tether, which invested $775 million into the Rumble platform. We'll get into why I think that's what I think that's gonna lead to. He says, except that no one even pretends that it has any utility or real world value. They can exist on any blockchain, but most of them live on a blockchain called Solana, which was made famous, by the way, for its close association with Sam Bankman-Fried of the FTX scam.
Correct.
Because Solana is a very cheap platform blockchain to send transactions. The fact that it's very cheap to send transactions on Solana has led to a lot of scammers building up a lot of very efficient tooling for launching scams on Solana, which leads to a lot of scams being perpetrated on Solana, and so on, in what amounts to a sort of virtuous cycle of fraudulence on Solana. But you don't need to understand anything about Solana or blockchains to understand meme coins. It's blockchain, it's cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
The right way to think about trading meme coins is like a giant game of financial chicken. Let's take an example. You and a small group of degenerate gamblers or degens that you probably met on a video game that involves blowing each other away with guns, gather around a campfire and decide to create a meme coin called Fart Coin. Yes, this all legitimately happened. You all chip in the princely sum of around €1 to create 1 million fart coins out of thin air, which you divide amongst yourselves. After the fart coins have been divvied up between you, you all get up from the campfire and stride into the social media wastes where you start tweeting, bleeding, and TikToking about fart coins' virtues in the hopes that you can convince other people to buy some of your fart coins. Again, I wish this was like joke, but this was fucking real. This actually happened. If your merry band of fart coiners can convince enough people to buy fart coins, then the price of fart coin will go up, at which point other degens might notice that the price of fart coins is going up and start buying fart coins for themselves. You have a run. Once these other degens own some fart coins, they'll start to do their own social media posts about how great fart coin is and how it's going to make everyone rich, recruiting new degens to the cause, rinse, repeat, etc. Now,
Holy shit.
Now, in order to win this game of fart coin chicken, at some point you will have to sell your fart coins for real money.
Yes.
If you sell too late, meaning after everyone else sells, there'll be no buyers and you lose all your money. Womp womp. But if you hold your fart coins as 1 million new suckers buy up tons of fart coins, you could make 1,000,000% returns to the moon. Thus, the game is to sell your fart coins to suckers as close to the top as possible before the inevitable crash in the fart coin market.
Wow, incredible.
Fart coin is all too real. All right. If everything about what I just described sounds incredibly stupid to you, then congratulations, you've understood it perfectly. I would say, however, that meme coins are in some sense the most honest corner of the cryptoverse. Most crypto scams involved some bro promising to solve hunger in Eritrea or create peace in the Middle East, or if you just buy some of their fart coins. Meme coins, however, dispense with all the pretense and favor full-on degenerate gambling and social media engineering. Armed with a deep understanding of the Twitter and TikTok algorithm and command of a small army of AI chatbots, you can make truly obscene amounts of money trading meme coins. Generational wealth amounts of money even. Which is ridiculous. That's just how the stupid economy works these days. Right? It's maybe worth mentioning that it has become extremely fashionable recently for the thought leaders in the crypto industry to describe the world's largest and most productive and profitable companies as being boomer meme coins. Make of that whatever you will. Berkshire Hathaway is the original boomer meme coin. Okay. Yeah, because Buffett used to buy a stock and then go shill. Except that stock had value and had earnings and used to go up in value, unlike a lot of this other shit. All right? Unreal. Let me give you one final important insight. The only difference between Bitcoin and a meme coin like Fart Coin is that Bitcoin came first. In other words, Bitcoin is a meme coin. A lot of people have convinced themselves they don't understand Bitcoin when in reality, they understand Bitcoin just fine, but they just can't believe it could be as stupid as the thing they're envisioning. But it is exactly that stupid. I love this. It can't be that stupid. You must be explaining it wrong. The only major difference is the optimal strategy for the Bitcoin game is slightly different than that for something like the Fart Coin game. Hyping the token relentlessly on social media is, of course, core to both games, but the Bitcoiners, Zionist Bitcoiners, I'm sorry, Golden Monarch, every time he has like this verbal tick. Whenever he sees Bitcoin, he wants to Zionist Bitcoin, because Zionists are running and benefiting totally from Bitcoin. They're the ones that hold 96 whatever percent, all the institutional Bitcoin held by Zionists, by the way. They are using this thing to inflate their own fucking pockets.
The money is there.
No, the money is, well, yes, because they're taking it from all the schmucks that are putting their money into this shit, real money that they earn, buying a fucking digital key that's worthless if you have no power, by the way, if you have no electricity. Hyping the token relentlessly is, of course, again, both core to both, but Bitcoiners lean more heavily on trying to convince all the other Bitcoiners to never, ever, ever sell their Bitcoins, no matter what, to HODL. Okay, which is hold on for dear life in the parlance of the bros. Because
diamond hands and all that.
Because the last person to sell loses the game. If you can convince most of the people who have Bitcoins to never sell, well, then you by definition can't be the last to sell, right? But unlike Bitcoin, which is at this point most accurately described as a religion, it's pretty hard to convince someone to never, ever, ever sell something called Fartcoin. All right. And he, by the way, provides a very handy, we're all going to make it, is a crypto bro tool for I'm trying to get rich off you idiots. And there's a handy footnote glossary down at the bottom that describes a lot of these terms. So let's get into the Trump coin, because this was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. First out of the gate was the official Trump meme token. And this happened the night of the crypto ball. And I don't know if you guys, if people watching are familiar with what the crypto ball is, but on inauguration night, Trump attended a gala affair that was held and put on by the crypto industry. And during this thing, all the lights shut off, and they announced that he is launching his own meme token, $Trump. Okay? Nobody apparently knew that this was happening. My new official Trump meme is here. It's time to celebrate everything we stand for. Winning! God, it could be Charlie Sheen. Join my very special Trump community. Get your Trump now. Get to TrumpMemes.com. Have fun! Right? And this was the entire thing that was posted. Look at how many views there were. 97 million views on the 17th of January. Now, I don't know why he blurred out the time stamp there. It was announced as the first, at the first initial official inaugural crypto ball was taking place in D.C. The crypto ball, as grotesque and utterly classless a sausage fest as the most grotesquely classless sausage fest you could possibly imagine, was attended by both the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, as well as a delegation from Nexo, the Russian mafia's favorite crypto bank, whose offices were hit with a massive raid by Bulgarian authorities early last year. All right, so there's the House Speaker addressing the crypto ball. Just think, only 4 years ago, this man was lying to Liz Cheney's face about how the Constitution works, and now here he is, surrounded by scam artists in a freak show of absolute cringe. They grow up so fast.
Yes, they do.
Some of the attendees were really excited about their new Trump tokens, as well they should be, seeing as how they probably made millions of dollars in just a few minutes out of absolutely nothing. Here we go. Right? The local top wouldn't be reached until...
Is that Urkel?
Well, no. Nick O'Neill, whoever this is.
Did I do that?
So the next day, my personal favorite aspect of the Trump launch was the contractual terms and conditions on offer over at the website gettrumpmemes.com. Some of the backstory is that the crypto industry has been fighting back against government regulators for years now by attempting to claim that cryptocurrency tokens cannot be investment contracts because they're not contracts at all. Literally hundreds of millions of dollars have been given to lawyers without consciences to enable them to boldly stroll into courtrooms across the globe and claim that without a contract between the buyer and the seller, a crypto token cannot be an investment contract. And if crypto tokens are not investment contracts, then the laws that have dutifully protected retail investors from scam artists for almost 100 years don't apply to crypto tokens. The Ray token that I just talked about in the last segment fit that at all? In other words,
Very possibly.
It's open season on retail chumps who think they can strike it rich by investing in fart coins. So what does this look like to you? Here are the T's and C's. You agree to the terms and conditions in its entirety when you A, access or use the website, B, access and or view any of the links to third-party resources and other information, very, jargony stuff. But if you purchase any of the Solana blockchain-based fungible cryptographic assets known as Trump meme cards or $Trump. Now here's the fine print in caps. The Trump memes are intended to function as an expression of support for and engagement with the ideals and beliefs embodied by the symbol $Trump and the associated artwork, deemed the artwork, and are not intended to be or to be the subject of an investment opportunity, investment contract, or security of any type. No federal or state agency or any other governmental authority has passed on or made any recommendation or endorsement of the Trump memes or the fairness or suitability of the purchase of the Trump memes, nor has any governmental authority passed upon or endorsed the merits of the services. Okay? That's a lot of legal jargon to say caveat emptor. And that this has no value and that nobody has said it's worth anything. So buy it at your own risk. It's also worth mentioning that despite the hype and the big numbers, it's actually the case that 80% of the Trump tokens that were created are not available to be traded by anyone yet. Because, you see, the Trump insiders have reserved 80% of the tokens for themselves to be slowly sold to suckers over the course of the first 3 years of the second Trump administration. So you were all bidding on a 20% pool of moons and men. Now here's the story, and this is why I brought this whole thing, that within minutes of the token's launch, of the price of Trump proceeded to do the whole to the moon thing that crypto bros love. And again, that's the rocket emoji, moon emoji is crypto dialect for this price is going to go way up very soon. It went from $0 to $6.53 in roughly a minute. And from there, rapidly rising to $72 within a few hours, theoretically increasing Trump's net worth by 2,000% with an on-paper boost of almost $60 billion. Guy's worth about $3 billion in real life. 60 billion he pumped his net worth up to, at least momentarily. All right. It says there's a whole lot of caveats to those numbers, but I'll let Molly White explain them. And there's a whole explanation to that. That 60 billion briefly made him one of the world's richest men. And that's on paper, but not really, because he didn't cash anything and he couldn't. Wasn't worth. During that first minute, someone with godlike market timing skills, who was definitely not engaging in insider trading, managed to A, decide that the Trump token was real, and B, buy $1 million worth of Trump tokens. This godlike trader achieved over a 1,000% return on their investment within seconds. According to Bubble Maps, as of Sunday, they had managed to cash out a small chunk of their Trump tokens for $20 million in real money, and were still holding on to more than $90 million worth of Trump tokens to be sold later. Again, not worth $90 million anymore now. I'm far too lazy and this story is far too stupid to bother checking. But if you want to check the data, it is available on soulscan.com.
Mm-hmm.
So here's Bubble Maps looking at the suspicious trades.
Buble.
Right? They sold 20 million and still hold the 96. All the data is public, but I wouldn't recommend digging into who was behind this trade unless you have a really burning desire to meet Kash Patel at some point in the next 4 years.
Ugh. And his girlfriend from PragerU
and
Unit 8200.
That's right. All right.
Correct.
You're probably wondering something like, wait, is that even legal? To which the short answer goes something like, well, it wasn't legal yesterday, but it's almost certainly legal now. A world where pump and dump scams are legal is the world American voters wanted, and it's the world they're going to get. Buckle up. Now, early on in its lifetime, Trump was mostly available to trade only on things called decentralized exchanges, which I'm not going to explain right now, though you can read my explanation of some of the details of how useful they are for laundering money for rogue nuclear states here, or initially for how Rockfin got its start, because they used a DeFi exchange called Kyber, and then they moved to Uniswap. They always went DeFi because they didn't want to go to a centralized exchange. And there's a lot of reasons to not go to a centralized exchange either. And mostly because the coin that you claim to buy at a centralized exchange really isn't yours. It's theirs that they buy and hold on your behalf. It's really messed up.
Right.
So the decentralized exchange thing changed when Justin Sun, who's a man that's been indicted by multiple federal agencies for insider trading and market manipulation, and is so crooked that even the rest of the crypto industry is like, yeah, that guy's a crook, listed Trump for trading on his crypto exchange named HTX, or formerly known as Huboy. But the first and most important running of money laundry is that you must rename your company for apparently no reason for every 2 to 3 years. HTX, for the record, Huboy Transactions, whatever, is a company that has been banned from operating within the United States and is widely believed to have deep ties to Chinese organized crime groups that dominate the global money laundering industry. Give me a China. I need a China.
China?
China.
Thank you. All right. Justin Sun is also, by the way, the largest investor in Trump's other crypto venture, World Liberty Financial. Put a pin in that information. We'll need it later. All right. World Liberty Financial, he actually corrects later on, that's not actually a Trump token. He actually just licensed his name to World Liberty Financial for them to say that it was a Trump coin, but he doesn't hold or actually endorse the thing at all. He says, I'm sure that these things are just coincidences about Justin Sun. Anyways, the rest of the Chinese crypto exchanges that are also banned from operating within the U.S. and much like HTX, are also widely believed to be involved in laundering money for fentanyl traffickers, terrorists, and rogue nuclear states, as well as independent content creators, apparently, rapidly jumped on board. Right? Eventually, even the regulated American exchanges like Coinbase decided to get in on the action. Gross. All right? They added that the night after the Trump coin launched. It's worth mentioning that Coinbase only started to allow its customers to trade dubious scams like meme coins after it was sued by America's SEC for massive amounts of securities fraud. That reality was the subject of a piece that Michel had published a month or so before the election, when he said that the responses of the executives to the charges filed against these recently indicted crypto companies has almost uniformly been to give the government the middle finger while doubling down on profiting off idiots trading dog and frog themed meme coins. I stand by every word. In fact, I would like to thank the token listing team at Coinbase for so effectively proving my point. It's also worth mentioning that Coinbase's CEO, Brian Armstrong, was one of the largest overall donors to the 2024 election. The super PAC he and his broligarch buddies funded contributed to the election of both Donald Trump for president, as well as something like 120 of the 538 members of Congress, all hand-selected with the explicit goal of legalizing meme coin scams. You may think I'm joking and or exaggerating about this, but I assure you I'm not. So back to the meme coins, because there's a lot to that. The stampede to buy the Trump tokens got so intense that it started to break things in the crypto markets. The decentralized exchanges on Solana started creaking under the load. Orders started failing to execute. People sold so much of their other cryptocurrencies to raise cash to buy Trump that it caused a small market crash across all tokens not named Trump after a once and future president. Records were shattered. Trump became the fastest meme coin to hit $1 billion market cap and hours later became the fastest meme coin to hit a $10 billion market cap, eventually becoming the largest meme coin to ever exist, as well as the 15th largest cryptocurrency of any kind by market cap. More Trump was traded on chain than any token in Solana history. Pretty soon, the market cap of Trump made it equivalent to the 143rd most valuable company in the United States, worth more than all of America's major defense contractors, food producers, and makers of things like housing and cars. And there was so much rejoicing. All right. Trump just keeps soaring to higher and higher prices. It now has a fully diluted valuation of $36 billion. Here you go. Making it worth more than Kraft Heinz, United Airlines, Mitsubishi, DraftKings, Young Brands. Okay, nothing's wrong with this picture until a woman showed up and crashed the sausage party. Après Melania, le deluge. Yes, I'm not kidding. All right, you can buy Melania now. It's a bit different if you've ever had the misfortune of encountering one of the weekly Melania Mondays threads on the right-wing message boards where hordes of pro-Trump incels spend all day salivating over pictures of Melania Trump in her underwear. Melania coin was released a little less than 24 hours after Trump. Now, while some of the bros were slightly put off by the idea of the first crypto president starting his reign by launching a shitcoin scam, the Bitcoin maxis in particular really hated it. More on that later. Plenty of the rest were extremely stoked about Trump. Oh my fucking God, our prez loves crypto. Let's fucking go to the moon. Was a typical sentiment expressed in the strange Creole of emoji, gibberish, and avarice that the bros used to communicate with each other. Unfortunately, however, they were not stoked about Melania. In fact, when the Melania launch announcement tweet appeared on the social media wastes, there was an incredibly drastic change of sentiment from the, oh my fucking God, our prez loves crypto, to something more akin to, oh my fucking God, the president's family is a bunch of scam artists who are using us for exit liquidity. Run for your lives. Fuck. This car crash of a vibe shift immediately caused the price of Trump to fall catastrophically by more than 50% within minutes. Holy shit. Look at that. All right. Melania cost Donald half his net worth, and she didn't even need to ask for a divorce. That's a fucking great line. All right. To give rise to some great memes. This gave rise to some great memes, especially among the Bitcoiners, usually referred to as these Bitcoin maxis, douchebags like Max Kaiser and Michael Saylor, who are, and this may surprise you, not fans of crypto, which they view as the provenance of unenlightened lesser life forms who don't yet understand things like Austrian economics and scarcity. That's their nonsense excuse why Bitcoin is different from every other crypto. In fact, they view crypto, and especially things like meme coins, as deeply damaging to the future Bitcoin-based utopia they plan to leave to their children. So, Bitcoiners thinking of Trump presidency meant Bitcoin being added to a new strategic reserve. Trump meme coin on Solana. No! $sign Melania. I am in hell. Help me. Well, more has happened since then. The Strategic Bitcoin Reserve refers to Senator Cynthia Lummis's plan to transfer roughly 1/4 of America's military budget directly into the hands of people who own Bitcoin. Don't laugh. This is a very real thing for which legislation has already been drafted. Amidst the carnage, now we're getting to the spoils, just how much they made. Amidst the carnage of some intrepid blockchain researchers started to look into just how much real money Trump insiders had managed to pull out of the Trump launch, and it turned to be a lot more than I personally would have thought possible. All right. Trump had already sold $500 million worth of tokens so far, the Trump team still controlled 85% of the supply. Now it's possible that some of that 500 million was just internal reallocation. That's doubtful. But either way, we can be sure that they made a fuck ton of money appear out of nowhere by turning Trump's brand into a meme coin and selling it to idiots addicted to social media memes involving dogs and or frogs. Probably hundreds of millions of dollars at a minimum as of the time of Connor's tweet, possibly pushing $1 billion at this point. It also turned out that not only had the Trump team seemingly managed to make hundreds of millions of dollars appear out of thin air by selling Trump tokens, insiders also seemed to control the decentralized marketplaces where Trump had started trading before all the Chinese organized crime exchanges started letting their users, non-American users, trade it. While it's unclear if Trump insiders controlled all such marketplaces, they definitely controlled most of the biggest ones. That's called sniping, by the way. It's annoying grunt work to figure out exactly how much they made in fees. So instead, I'll just say that last time Connor checked on the on-chain data, the sum total in fees earned across the decentralized markets for Trump for Solana was $58 million. Up there with what you would pay for one of the biggest and most expensive apartments in one of the most expensive cities in the world. Of course,
that kind of just sent you. Pretty please. Thank you very much.
Of course, that kind of chump change won't get you more than a few hundred Ferraris, but let's turn the other way. Trump is currently, what was that? It's $70.
Yeah, open it up. Open the thing. What does that look like to everyone? This is the Trump USD. This is the actual graph.
Okay, hold on. Open in browser. Hold on.
Look at this graph.
Oh my God, this is very funny. Yes. Anything look familiar? Anything look familiar about that shape right there?
It does look very familiar. Yes. It does look extremely familiar. If you just turn it sideways, it's very apparent.
Have fun with your Bitcoin. You're getting played.
Yeah.
Right? So, getting back to Michelle here.
Have a good time with your Bitcoin.
Okay, you can get a few hundred Ferraris, of course, but thankfully at this point, based on the... What was that?
I don't know.
That might have been my headphones. I don't know how. I had it charging. Based on the incredibly high volume of Trump trading going on these days, following that initial assessment, insiders have probably earned well over $100 million in fees on Trump trades. Put it together with the hundreds of millions of dollars that they were able to extract from selling their initial allotment of Trump, and it's a pretty impressive take for 10 minutes of work creating a meme coin and sending a tweet. Although, no, that was the result of it. It took months to create this meme coin, build the hype, and figure out how to launch it so it would do that. Of course, then there's the possibly uncomfortable question of where did all this money come from? Because someone had to buy up all those Trump tokens, right? China.
You think?
Is apparently where that pumped. All right. Look here, scroll down, sort by volume, coin market cap. Almost all of it came from China, according to this. Binance, what is that? Buy King, and these are all Chinese exchanges, effectively. It's not like Coinbase.
Allegedly.
Right. Well, no, not allegedly. This is it. This is the exchanges that were actually doing the most Trump coin transacting. All right. And it was all China because they all bought in. Now, that doesn't mean that all of the hundreds of millions the Trump team was able to pocket came from people with Chinese or Singaporean passports. And it definitely doesn't mean that the 500 million flowing through sketchy Asian crypto exchanges into Trump insiders' pockets was actually just a way for someone, TikTok, all right, to pay a massive bribe in broad daylight to convince Trump that banning a large Chinese social media platform from the American market was a bad idea. It does, however, mean that the business through which all these hundreds of millions of dollars passed on their way to Trump insiders' pockets were run by people with Chinese or Singaporean passports operating out of a country somewhere on the eastern half of the Eurasian continent. Now, he also says that Protos pointed out that the hourly trading volumes for Trump suggest that it is actually Chinese traders and not just international traders trading on the Chinese exchanges driving the Trump market, which is also interesting that you've got China buying up so much Trump coin. Bringing back American jobs, am I right? But not all the money came from China. Plenty of it came from the sad souls who've gathered together on the official Trump coin subreddit to spin various conspiracy theories to explain how they lost all their money on a high-quality investment like Trump. Donald and Melania have a son named Barron. Barron apparently loves crypto. In fact, a lot of people seem to think the Trump and or Melania meme coins were his and Eric's doing, though the jury's still out on who was responsible for this particular hurricane of fraud. So, yep, Barron also happened. Or at least the team tried to make Barron happen, but much like Fetch before it, Barron didn't really happen. The Trump insiders in charge of the Barron launch only managed to scam their fans for more money than most Americans make in a few years on it, packing it in pretty quickly after the token was launched. Barely worth getting into, but here it is for posterity. All right. A third Trump coin family token has hit the blockchain. There's evidence that the wallets associated with the launch of Melania are also connected to a failed official Barron meme token that debuted last night and peaked at $500 million of market cap. They're in the process of selling their remaining tokens right now. Total pump and dump type of stuff. This is Ponzi scheme. I'm just going to put a link in here to let you know that the pastor who spoke at the Trump inauguration launched his own meme coin within hours of his speaking engagement at the Capitol. I shit you not. All right. No, this is just how the economy works now. Trump wasn't even the only cryptocurrency token Trump sold to Chinese investors over this past weekend. It turns out our old friend Justin Sun, remember that pin from earlier, was determined to increase his stake in Trump's other crypto project, World Liberty Financial, by buying the rest of the available World Liberty Financial tokens. But I'm tired, boss. You're going to have to read up on that one on your own. All right. Insane. Apparently, 60% of it goes directly into Trump's pocket on World Liberty Financial. Okay. Students for Trump. I mean, this just keeps going and going and going. All right. Final thoughts, because I'm exhausted. I'm tired too. There are serious finance people with very fancy degrees who think the Trump token scam is good for the economy and society. What do I mean? These same serious finance people with very fancy degrees now run the government of the United States of America. Specifically, they've been placed in charge of the financial markets. Despicable humans like Preston Byrne, crypto lawyer extraordinaire, think there's a lot of upside to their billing hours to meme coins and are rejoicing about the incredible amount of the federal judiciary's time they'll get to waste litigating this bullshit. Good luck, America. Again, great piece. Now, I also brought a whole article about
my body weary.
I also brought a whole article about the crypto ball. That one took a long time, so I'm gonna just say go read this because there's so much to what went down at the crypto ball, and we covered a lot about what happened with the Trump coin at the crypto ball. But the lights went out. That's Natalie Brunell. By the way, last week I made a mistake. I meant to say Natalie Williams contributed to the channel, not Natalie Brunell, because that's Natalie Brunell who made fun of and imitated the tax the rich with a dress that said "fix the money." Just garbage. This is actually a really good article. Michael Saylor and these
America great again.
Cringy Bitcoin douchebags with their $100 billion. Yeah, literally, there's the dress. You helped inspire my dress. I hope we can talk about it soon. So you can get in on that grift because you haven't grifted enough on enough grift so far, AOC. All right, so get to that. Check that out. Man, meme coins suck. But they are able to, people like, look, if you bought Dogecoin when it was worth nothing and now it's worth 20 or 30 cents, you're a millionaire, a multi-millionaire off of dumb shit. And a ton of these people,
if you sell it at the right time.
And usually
it's straight up gambling.
And usually only the people on the inside sell it at the right time.
Correct.
Right? So 2 weeks to fatten the curve. That's right. 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Safe and effective. It's all very, very safe and effective. So Rockfin rug pull
Once
scam.
you have their money, you never give it back.
Very Ferengi. We have been dealing with very Ferengi type of people, from the Rockfin people to the Trump meme coin.
Acquisition is great as eternal.
So, okay, so here's the final piece to this puzzle that I wanted to put out, and this was put out on Thursday by the SEC themselves. Remember how Michelle said that we now have the crypto scammers running the SEC and in the government? They basically said, you're on your own when it comes to meme coins. As part of an effort to provide a greater clarity on the application of the federal securities laws to crypto assets, the Division of Corporation Finance is providing its views on meme coins. A meme coin is a type of crypto asset inspired by internet memes, characters, current events, or trends for which the promoter seeks to attract an enthusiastic online community to purchase the meme coin and engage in its trading. Although individual meme coins may have unique features, meme coins typically share certain characteristics. Meme coins typically are purchased for entertainment, social interaction, and cultural purposes, and their value is driven primarily by market demand and speculation. In this regard, meme coins are akin to collectibles, meaning baseball cards or Pokemons or Beanie Babies. Meme coins also
those are probably much more consistently lucrative.
Meme coins also typically have limited or no use or functionality. I'm going to read that again because that seems vaguely important. Meme coins also typically have limited or no use or functionality.
It don't make no motherfucking sense.
Given the speculative nature of meme coins, they tend to experience significant market price volatility. That's an understatement. And are often accompanied by statements regarding their risks and lack of utility other than for entertainment or other non-functional purposes, depending on who you ask. It is the division's view that the transactions in these types of memes coins described in this statement do not involve the offer and sale of securities under the federal securities laws. As such, persons who
that's pretty much telling you you're on your fucking own.
Well,
that's what that sounds like.
Persons who participate in the offer and sale of meme coins do not need to register their transactions with the Commission under the Securities Act of 1933 or fall within one of the Securities Act's exemptions from registration. Accordingly, neither meme coin purchasers nor holders are protected by the federal securities laws. They just basically made Ray a meme coin. Section 2A1 of the Securities Act and Section 3A10 of the Securities Exchange Act of 1934 defines the term of security by providing a list of various financial instruments, including stock, note, and bond. A meme coin does not constitute any of the common financial instruments specifically enumerated in the definition of security because, among other things, It doesn't generate a yield or convey rights to future income, profits, or assets of a business. It also didn't exist when those laws were written, but that's neither here nor there. In other words, a meme coin itself is not itself a security. The aforementioned statutory sections that provide that investment contracts are securities. Given that a meme coin is not itself a security, we conduct our analysis of whether a meme coin may be offered and sold as part of an investment contract under the investment contract test set forth in SEC versus W.J. Howey. The Howey test analyzes whether certain arrangements or instruments are investment contracts based on their economic realities, meaning they go up and down. Very jargony, long statement. All right. Notwithstanding the foregoing, this statement does not extend the offer and sale of meme coins that are inconsistent with the description set forth above, or products that are labeled meme coins in an effort to evade the application of the federal securities laws by disguising a product that otherwise would constitute a security. It's not. As noted above, the division will evaluate the economic realities of that particular transaction if it's deemed somewhere that something actually acts like a stock that has value, that's generating some kind of return for a shareholder. Further, although the offer and sale of meme coins may not be subject to the federal securities laws, fraudulent conduct related to the offer and sale of meme coins may be subject to the enforcement action or prosecution by other federal or state agencies under other federal and state laws. You got to find another loophole. But the SEC doesn't want anything to do with meme coins. Fuck you. You're out. I'm out. Meme coins, you're on your own.
I don't even know what yeah, it just sounds like we're not going to help you.
Yes.
If that's, So,
not only are we not going to help you, but you have zero legal recourse when it comes to these instruments if you get scammed or screwed out of your money, which you likely inevitably will because they have no inherent value. And we know this. And you know this, man.
Have a good time with your Bitcoin.
No, please do not pay us in Bitcoin. Please do not pay us in anything other than fiat USD cash if you are able
your
to.
Crypto and everything else that you're playing with.
Shut up, you clown. All right. So there's our wall of fame. We love these people. All right, the way to get us actual cash like Colin just did is ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. We have Cash App, $Indie News Network, PayPal.me/Indie News Network as well. And then, of course, we have our INNnewsletter.com, which I'd love for you to subscribe to, but you know what? Don't pay there. Go to Ko-fi because INN Newsletter, let me tell you, Substack takes 10% and then Stripe takes another 2.5%. So we're only getting, again, let's try to keep as much. You want to support the streamers? Those platforms have got hundreds of millions of dollars in VC money that are supporting them. We got you for supporting us to hold them accountable.
Who are these people?
We're getting to fuck Israel part. All right, let's go. I don't like doing this, and they keep making me do this every week. And I have to read fucking headlines like this. All right, I'm sorry, everyone. Israel wiped out at least 1,200 entire families in Gaza, analysis finds. And this comes from Indie Media Award honoree Sharon Zhang over at Truthout. Indie, we're going to the best. There are also at least 3,400 families with only one surviving member. So 1,200 families wiped out, 3,400 families with one surviving member. Who knows what kind of condition they're in and how long they're going to last with no one else in their family to take care of them or look out for them. Look at this. This is what they're dealing with. Like, for real. Amir Hassan al-Shafi eats an iftar meal, the breaking of the fast, okay, with family, and their destroyed
I have
house
another
amid the
one
rubble
for that.
of buildings in Beit Lahia, okay, in the northern Gaza Strip on March 4th during Ramadan. Just look at that. Awful. Like, just fucking Trump, Biden, Netanyahu, fuck them all. They're just monsters. Okay. The Israeli military completely wiped out at least 1,200 Palestinian families in Gaza in its genocide, a new analysis finds, shedding more light on the staggering and permanent toll of Israel's extermination campaign. And it's even more than that, but that's only the ones that they've counted so far. A Reuters analysis of data, so you know it definitely was whitewashed heavily because it came from Reuters, and they are huge Israel apologists, came from the Gaza Health Ministry. I don't even know how there is a Gaza Health Ministry at this point, but I guess there is somehow. But they found at least 1,238 families defined as married couples, and any children they may have were totally erased with no survivors. That's not a war crime or anything, is it, Reef?
No, speaking of, make me big. Make me big.
Go.
Do the embiggening. This was also the Ramadan eating meal in Gaza. So, I mean, you're like just amongst the rubble. Like,
wow.
Anyway, you just went along with that other picture you showed.
Yeah. Okay. Families with between 5 and 9 members make up roughly a third of the families wiped out. In at least one case, Israeli forces massacred every member of a family of 14. Further, almost a quarter of Palestinians in the official death toll of over 48,000 people were 12 years old or younger, while nearly a third were under 18, the report found. Like we said, they are killing children. Children who have been under occupation their entire fucking lives, that never voted for Hamas or anyone for that matter, because they're children. There are roughly 8,000 people in the death tally for whom there is no identifying information like age or gender because they were vaporized.
They literally had to start weighing like amounts of body parts to find an average. That's how things were working then.
Over 2,200.
Like a human child is, 40 pounds or whatever. So you just find that amount of body parts and that's it. Fucking wild. Like
over 2,200 in the official death toll were under 2 years old when they were slaughtered by Israeli forces, the analysis found. Slaughtered. Remember that word. Slaughtered.
Yep.
Not just Israeli forces, American bombs. It's possible that even more families were wiped out in the genocide, as experts have repeatedly stressed that the true death toll is far higher than the official count. The analysis roughly lines up with that of Gaza health officials, who reported late last year that Israel had caused over 1,400 families to be wiped from the civil registry. Further, officials found that there were at least 3,400 families who had lost all but one member to Israeli attacks. So this tracks, except that it shows no acceleration of any of that since then, and there's been very little ceasefire, even when they have a ceasefire in place. Yeah, I don't buy it.
Mm-hmm.
This is the experience of 13-year-old Mohammed Al-Agha. Reuters documented Agha lost both his parents, his brother, and 2 sisters aged 11, 10, and 8 during the genocide. Palestinian father Abdel Salam al-Banah, the publication documented, is the only surviving member of his family unit. His 9-year-old daughter, his 5-year-old son, and his wife were killed in an Israeli airstrike on their apartment building on December 15th, 2023. Imagine having to fucking go on knowing that these fuckers murdered everyone in your family. What would you want to do?
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
He spent a week surviving under the rubble of the building himself, he said. He and two of his in-laws found their way out from dark ruins after feeling an air pocket, but the bodies of his wife and children are still buried under there, with Israel blocking heavy equipment, of course, from entering Gaza. He said, nothing's more painful than this. I can't put them to rest. But they're only going to... I don't even want to... Because he and other members of his family escaped from the rubble, Bana was able to report the deaths of his wife and children to health officials and therefore have their deaths tallied in the toll. But officials estimate that there are at least 14,000 people whose bodies are still stuck under the rubble and are excluded from the death toll. Last month, the Gaza Government Information Office said that officials believe that those deaths included that the true death toll from Israeli attacks is at least 61,709 people, which we also believe is still severely undercounting. Support Truth Out. That's Sharon. Again, Sharon's an Indie Media Award honoree, and we only go to people that we actually really trust what they say on this one. I trust Andre Damon over at World Socialist website enough on this one because, again, kind of like we were talking about uppers. We were talking about with Oz earlier before the show Dragnet. You're getting inside look at Reef's house right now.
Yes.
Just the facts, ma'am. Israel is blocking entry of food into Gaza and plans to cut the power and water. And this was, again, 6 days ago, March 3rd. There is a line of trucks.
You've been smoking marijuana?
Me? No. Maybe.
You talking about Dragnet? What?
Trucks line up at the Egyptian side of the Rafah border crossing between Egypt and the Gaza Strip, and after Israel blocked the entry of aid trucks into Gaza on Sunday, March 2nd. That was the last time we were live.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we've been reporting on a lot of this stuff for a while. The office of Netanyahu announced Sunday that Israel has blocked all food shipments into Gaza, aiming to starve the population into submission and ethnically cleanse the enclave. That's not a war crime, is it, Reef?
Netanyahu?
Is that a war crime? Refresh my memory.
Fuck you.
Right. So that's a yes.
Yeah.
Anna Mayer says we should all watch Jones Plantation together. Okay.
Yeah. I don't think I've seen that.
Sure. Right. You hurt my family, I'll kill you with my bare hands. Well, that's in a movie. Yes. So again, we've decided to block all entry of goods. This is from Netanyahu himself. I'm not this isn't Hamas saying this. This isn't anybody else. This is directly out of the douchebag's mouth himself. Before a cabinet meeting. No trucks entered Gaza this morning, nor will they at this stage, because Trump and Miriam Adelson gave them permission. As if Miriam Adelson can give Trump permission, and Trump can give Netanyahu permission to do whatever the fuck they're doing.
And the best part of this plan is, no one can stop me.
The White House endorsed Israel's policy of mass starvation, because of course they did. Israel has negotiated in good faith since the beginning of the Trump administration to ensure the release of, how are they saying this with a straight face, of hostages held captive by Hamas terrorists.
What did he say?
We will support their decision on next steps, given Hamas has indicated it is no longer interested in a negotiated ceasefire. So you mean exactly what we called 6 weeks ago when they announced this quote-unquote ceasefire, that Trump will try to negotiate directly, which he tried to this week, declare that a failure and say, well, Bibi, we tried, good faith, you got to take care of it, go finish the job, take care of the problem. Yeah.
I am altering the deal. Pray
it was the most obvious shit ever that it was going to go down that way. And it's just awful that people didn't see it. Or, I mean, look, what were we going to do about it other than not vote for either one of the fucking warmongering imperialists that were going to continue this shit, which is what all of us did. They keep expanding into Syria. They've stolen half of Syria. They keep expanding into Lebanon. I wouldn't say bye-bye. I mean, I don't know who's gonna stop them, because nobody stopped them yet. The announcement, of course, came after the lapse of phase 1 of the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. Netanyahu government has reneged on its commitment to begin phase 2 and has insisted on demanding the release of more hostages before continuing phase 1. In reality, of course, Israel's refusal to uphold the ceasefire agreement is a calculated provocation aimed at creating the conditions for mass starvation of the people in Gaza in order to forcibly displace them and seize their land. Amen, Andre Damon. You got that right.
I don't care.
Last month, Trump declared that the United States supported the ethnic cleansing of Gaza, a policy previously proposed by sections of the Israeli government. In announcing...
Mom, I'm sorry.
No, he's not. They're going to name it after him. He's not sorry.
No.
In announcing...
You can do it, baby.
In announcing the blockade, Netanyahu's office warned, quote, if Hamas continues its refusal, there will be further consequences. The Israeli newspaper Israel Hayom, that's today, reported that the government is preparing to enforce a total blockade of food and water into Gaza. And of course, if they blockade electricity, that also stops any electrical and water processing plants, salination, desalination, and they get no potable water. Israel's Channel 14 reported that the energy minister Eli Cohen is planning to propose shutting off Gaza's electricity supply at the next Israeli cabinet meeting. Israel's blockade of food...
AKA siege warfare, which is... survey says...
Ding, 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 ding. Israel's blockade of food aid to Gaza is a war crime and a crime against humanity. Just add another charge to the pile at the ICJ that they won't do anything about. Oxfam condemned the move in a statement, a strongly worded letter, calling it a reckless act of collective punishment explicitly prohibited under international humanitarian law, of which we will do absolutely nothing.
How dare you? How dare you?
Sure. UN Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs Tom Fletcher condemned the move in a post on Twitter, declaring, quote, Israel's decision to halt aid into Gaza is alarming. International humanitarian law is clear. We must be allowed to deliver vital life-saving aid. Or else what? Or else what?
Right.
In a statement, Doctors Without Borders spokesperson Caroline Seguin said, quote, Israel is once again blocking an entire population from receiving aid, using it as a bargaining chip. This is unacceptable, outrageous, and will have devastating consequences. Which is exactly what they intend. No, the devastating consequences are that the Palestinians will be murdered.
Yeah.
That's the devastating consequences, not that there will be...
Zero consequences for Israel doing it.
Right. Kenneth Roth, former head of Human Rights Watch, said that Israel has an absolute duty under the Geneva Conventions to allow food to at least enter Gaza. No, they have a responsibility as an occupying force to provide nourishment and water.
Yeah.
Avocados from Mexico.
That would be nice. They'd probably send them.
Yeah, but we're going to tariff them first. Don't worry about it.
Quote, Israel's latest threat to cut off all aid is a resumption of the war crimes starvation strategy that led to war crimes charges against Netanyahu at the ICC to begin with. Of course. The entire population of Gaza is suffering from food insecurity, at minimum, due to Israel's deliberate blockade of aid. In December, the UN estimated that over 19,000 children had been hospitalized for acute malnutrition in just 4 months. We saw the videos of literal children that were just skin and bones that literally died of starvation. They were starved to death by Israel. Last month, health officials in Gaza reported that 6 babies froze to death in a 2-week period due to widespread lack of fuel to counter freezing temperatures. Again, they were on the aid trucks. Israel stopped the aid trucks. There were tents, there were blankets, there was fuel, there were ways to keep people warm there. There were jackets, there was clothing, diapers, medical supplies. Meanwhile, back in the Hall of Injustice, the United States is Go ahead. Is escalating its.
Meanwhile,
Yeah.
Meanwhile, at the Legion of Doom.
That's pretty accurate because the United States is escalating its military support for Israel. Thanks so much. On Friday, the U.S. State Department announced that Secretary of State Little Marco Rubio had invoked emergency authorities, quote unquote, to send an additional $4 billion in weapons to Israel. Sure. Nobody's mad about that. State Department said the U.S. would, quote, continue to use all available tools to fulfill America's long-standing commitment to Israel's security and Norman Bremen's orders. Thanks, Marco. Including means to counter security threats. We all know who Marco answers to. It's the reason why he has that job. The package includes a variety of potential weapons, with reports indicating that over 35,000 2,000-pound bombs could be sent. Because you need that.
Phrasing?
35,000 2,000-pound bombs. What the fuck? Why are they dropping 35,000 bombs on a tiny little strip of land that over 1 million people allegedly still live at? And we're sending it there for them to do it. Nothing to see here. Okay? Those are also, by the way, war crimes. Each of these bombs is capable of leveling an entire city block. So I guess this is for the West Bank. The Biden administration sent Israel at least 14,000 of these bombs, which Israel used alongside other U.S.-provided weapons to destroy most of the structures in Gaza. Like I said, next is going to be for the West Bank. Responding to the announcement, Netanyahu praised Trump. Of course he did, because monsters praise monsters, saying, quote, Donald Trump is the greatest friend that Israel has ever had in the White House. Jesus. George W. Bush is really bad about that statement, because he certainly licked Netanyahu's boots really hard. And so did Joe Biden. He's shown it by sending us all the munitions that were being held up. This way, he's giving Israel the tools we need to finish the job against Iran's terror access. So he's already setting up for the Iran war that's coming. And yes, he's leading us into war with Iran, if you didn't already. All right. Israel has a right to defend itself. No, they don't. According to Gaza's health ministry, again, 46,565 Palestinians have been killed and over 109,000 injured since the start of the Gaza genocide on October 8th, 2023. I don't believe that Israel actually responded the evening of the 7th. I could be wrong, but I don't think they did. Gaza's government media office puts the death toll at over 61,000, including the thousands of Palestinians missing and believed to be buried under rubble. Real death toll, including those who've starved to death and succumbed to diseases, of course, far higher. And that's World Socialist website reporting on Israel's war crimes this week. But we got more, folks.
Up in the sky! Look! It's a plane! It's a plane! It's Superman!
Independent journalist Sanaa Saeed, I like her a lot. She was with Al Jazeera for a while. Earlier today, Israeli forces, and this was March 7th. So this was literally Friday night. She posted this. Earlier today, Israeli forces raided and set fire to a mosque in Nablus. Again, they raided and set fire to a mosque in Nablus, the occupied West Bank. How many headlines did you see about this? Attacks on Muslim... None. Attacks on Muslim places of worship in particular have been a mainstay of Israeli violence well before October 2023. The reason we keep hearing nonstop about anti-Semitism is not just to justify the extermination of Arabs and Muslims, but also so we don't start dissecting the actual racism, which is a structure, not a slur or a feeling, at the heart of the U.S.-backed Israeli occupation of Palestinians. And here are some of the photos of the burned down mosque.
Jesus, what is that, Chernobyl? Holy shit.
No, they raided it, and then they literally set fire to the place inside.
No, I know. Tell me that doesn't look exactly like abandoned shit in Chernobyl. That's fucking awful.
Yeah.
That was a mosque. Look, there's stained glass back there. I'm sure that was gorgeous.
Yep.
You know? Like, they take care of their shit. Ugh.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, how many headlines?
Fucking assholes.
Tagging all the Indonesian outlets. So they also burned and destroyed a mosque. And then finally, more in the war crimes.
Mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
The fourth Israeli war crime I'm reporting on this week was another article from Sharon Zhang over at Truthout. She seems to be really good at reporting on these. The headline, I couldn't even believe. I'm like, I have to bring this. I don't want to, but I have to, because people aren't talking about this nearly enough. Israel detains 14-year-old Palestinian boy from West Bank without charges. And we've talked about the number of children being detained without charges, and already that Israel has detained a record number. But these are children. These are children, folks. Children. The children's rights group. Children. Sorry, children.
The children are future.
Where's that sorry, children? Because literally we need to be apologizing to
children.
Thank you. The children's rights group has said that this is the youngest person Israel has held without charges on record. So they're breaking new records and breaking new ground, as always. Good job, Israel.
And those are amazing looking brand new American rifles. And brand new, extremely expensive binoc phosphorus night vision goggles.
And what about the tank behind it?
That too. That's also pretty expensive. But that's probably Israeli made. That's Merkava, I'm betting.
Yep.
Might be. That doesn't look like a tank. It looks like ATV. But APC,
they're
Aton.
It's an Aton. They guard Aton armored vehicles during a military occupation in Nablus. They need to guard their machines.
APC.
While they're destroying the houses, okay? The Israeli army.
Little red triangles show up above them.
Remember, we're under ceasefire here on March 4th. The Israeli army killed 2 Palestinians in the eastern neighborhood of Jenin using armored vehicles and drones in the operation. They also burned 2 houses and destroyed another during the military operation. Okay.
Yeah.
Ceasefire. Quote. Now, this is Sharon Zhang again, Indie Media Award honoree over at Truthout, also Indie Media Award honoree. Although Truthout has been really shit-libby. Truthout and Common Dreams have been super disappointing. I mean, just nonstop TDS. Calling that out, man, it's terrible. Like, be more objective. Okay, a lot of you were not nearly as hard on the Biden administration about this stuff, and I'll be the first to say that. You know, and I put these outlets as Indie Media Award honorees because I do think they still put out a lot of good stuff. But man, it's getting hard to defend the amount of simping that they still do for Democrats. They're still just hoping that the Democrats will finally turn it around and represent us, but we know that's never going to happen. Not until we get the money out. And I don't know if that's ever going to happen. So again, Israeli forces abducted a 14-year-old boy from the occupied West Bank last month and are imprisoning him without charges, making him the youngest Palestinian child on record to be placed under Israeli administrative detention order, a rights group says. DCIP, and they literally have to have an organization called the Defense for Children International of Palestine, just for the Palestinian children, because there are so many, reports that Israeli forces seized Muin Ghassan Fahid Salhat from his home in the West Bank town of Beit Fajar in the middle of the night on February 19th. The 9th grade boy has been issued a 4-month order for administrative detention, a practice in which Israeli forces hold Palestinians without charges or trial based on secret evidence not provided to the detainee or their lawyer, if they even have one.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up.
Israeli soldiers forcibly entered the boy's home at 3:40 in the morning and detained his father, blindfolding him, tying his hands behind his back. Soldiers similarly detained Muin when the young boy awoke and went to look for his father. The soldiers ransacked their belongings, the report says, and confiscated their phones and computer because they're thieves and scumbags. Soldiers then took the boy away and ordered his father not to move for 10 minutes, according to DCIP. That's what terrorists and hostages do. Don't move for 10 minutes or we'll murder your kid. The family was not given a warrant for the raid. No, they just walked in and took him at 3:40 in the fucking morning while everyone was sleeping. Quote, administrative detention violates fundamental due process rights, yet Israeli forces are now expanding this draconian policy to detain Palestinian children indefinitely without charge or trial, said Aid Abu Ekitash, Accountability Program Director for DCIP. Muin's case sets a dangerous precedent showing that no Palestinian child, regardless of age, is safe from arbitrary imprisonment under Israel's military rule. And Netanyahu just got a boner. Sorry, everyone.
Sorry, children.
Muin is one of 112 Palestinian children held in administrative detention by Israel, according to the information provided by the Israeli Prison Service. This is not fake news. This is not Palestinian propaganda. This is not Pallywood. This is the Israeli Prison Service. They're proud of imprisoning 112 children.
This is the same prison service where people protested for their rights to rape
male prisoners. That's right. Their rights to rape male prisoners with metal rods.
I wish I was kidding.
Yes.
At this point, Israel's continued existence is a mockery of morality.
Your continued existence is a mockery of morality.
This is the highest number of children held in administrative detention on record since DCIP began monitoring the practice in 2008, the group has reported. 17 years. So tell me that they haven't escalated at all. Okay, and again, they're still using October 7th and the hostages, of which we know Hannibal Directive. We know that the families of the hostages are ready to sue the Israeli government because they've tried not to get them back, and they've used this as justification for all of this crap and bombing every day people that aren't firing back at them. Like, have we heard of any rockets being sent from Gaza or anywhere toward Israel in weeks? When? But yet the bombs continue to fall. And now they've violated the ceasefire again, but not from Gaza. It's coming from Israel again. I think I read somewhere 192 violations or something like that, or 92 violations of the ceasefire already documented. They don't give a shit. Nothing's going to happen to them. The figure has rapidly increased as Israel's genocide in Gaza has continued. As of April of last year, for instance, Israel was holding 61 Palestinian in administrative detention, DCIP recorded, which then was also a record high at the time. Now it's double that. The group says that Israel's continued use of administrative detention against Palestinians is, of course, a violation of human rights. Yay. It's a strongly worded letter.
Is that amnesty?
No,
amnesty,
it's DCIP. All right.
Okay.
Israel's routine use.
Sounds like an amnesty statement.
Nope.
You know?
Israel's routine use of administrative detention against Palestinians, including children, constitutes arbitrary detention and violates international human rights law, of which they're apparently not subject to, but okay. Additionally, the Fourth Geneva Convention strictly prohibits an occupying power from forcibly transferring or unlawfully imprisoning protected persons, making once again Israel's practice a clear breach of its legal obligations, the group said. War crimes is the easier way to say that. Israel's practices regarding Palestinian prisoners have only gotten more strict amid Israel's genocide in Gaza, with Israel making it even harder for detainees to access legal representation. Many children in administrative detention go weeks without being granted access to a lawyer, DCIP said. Completely part of the plan. What are you going to do about it? The group added that Israel is unique in its harsh prosecution of Palestinian children. No surprise there. Quote, Israel has the dubious distinction of being the only country in the world that systematically prosecutes between 500 and 700 children in military courts each year, while systematically stripping away the fundamental right to a fair trial right. That's what they do. And again, they're, like I said, Truth Out is shit libby for sure, and we're resisting Trump's authoritarian pressure. By writing about it, I guess that's what they do. By screaming with their hair on fire and fear-mongering and hoping the Democrats are going to be the solution ain't the answer. And of course, they're on Blue Sky too, or Blue Cry. So, so fuck Israel. Like I said, this was the conclusion of the fuck Israel portion of the program. If you are able and of means, please support the networks and support the independent media that you want to see. The best ways to do that are via Cash App, $, Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, and paypal.me/Indie News Network. You can sign up for newsletters and alerts at innnewsletter.com, and that's totally free. You can also support with an annual or monthly contribution there too.
Who are these people?
For those who don't know and have not been here since the beginning, Reef's internet crashed and his cable modem is shot. So I'm flying solo tonight. He is alive. He is okay. He is not in an undisclosed location, and thankfully he has not been disappeared, because we don't know what's happening in these trying times right now. It's very scary. Now I mentioned narratives surrounding the good professor. Around Mahmoud Khalil, and I wanted to mention that even Senator Chris Murphy, who I have zero love for, sorry to show you my DMs, who I have zero love for, somehow figured out how to get this one right. So Middle East Eye posts that in a 3-minute video posted to X, Twitter, Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut makes the case for why all Americans should be concerned about the arrest of Palestinian activist Mahmoud Khalil. All right, this is a 3-minute video, and I actually think it is important, and I'm going to show you why I think he's wrong and what he's missing in the end, but I'm sure you'll figure it out.
A young man by the name of Mahmoud Khalil, an immigrant and a legal permanent resident of the United States, is being held right now in prison, even though no criminal charges have been filed against him. Now, I want to tell you why that should matter to every single American. Khalil is a recent graduate of Columbia University. He opposed Israel's military operation in Gaza. He has deep animus toward Israel's policies and the U.S. support for those policies. He helped organize the protests over Gaza at his university last year. You can disagree with his views or his politics, but there is no evidence he has broken any law. But last weekend, Trump officials entered his apartment and took him into custody. They brought him to a detention facility in New Jersey at first, but when his family went to visit him, he wasn't there. For a while, his family and his lawyer had no idea where he was. They eventually found out that he was being held in a detention facility in Louisiana, and that's where he still is today. In dictatorships, they call this practice being disappeared. No charges, no claims of criminal behavior. The White House doesn't claim he did anything criminal. He's in jail because of his political speech. And here's why everybody should care. In America, your political speech is protected, whether or not the president likes what you say. But today, if you're loyal to Donald Trump, your speech is going to be protected, even if it's hate speech. You can be Marco Ellis, an employee of Doge, who said he, quote, was racist before it was cool, and, quote, normalize Indian hate. And the Vice President of the United States will tweet in your defense. But if you are disloyal to Trump, or you're organizing against Trump's political agenda, your speech could be criminalized. You could find yourself in jail. Now, Trump chose to begin by disappearing a Palestinian immigrant, hoping that his place of birth and his immigrant status would just cause people to look the other way. But we cannot, because once it becomes normal for the regime to disappear people simply for protest against the regime's policies, once a citizen or a resident of America can be locked away with no charges against them simply because they protested, there is no going back for America. Even if you're a hardened Trump supporter, this practice should cross the line for you. Even if you disagree with Khalil's views, this practice should cross the line for you. This has nothing to do with supporting Trump. This is about supporting an American value, maybe the most important American value, protecting free speech, even if it's speech you disagree with. If our new reality is that a president can disappear an opposition protester with no charges filed against them, we are not America any longer. Today it's Mahmoud Khalil. Tomorrow it's me or you.
Sadly, he ain't wrong. Now, like I said, he's almost there. It's not criticism of Trump that got Mahmoud disappeared, asshole. And this is why I'm mad, and this is why I brought this. Okay, why be disingenuous like that? We know why, because of his funders. It was his criticism of Israel. Trump is doing this on behalf of Israel, Chris, Senator. Plenty of people have criticized him before for years. This is because of Beitar US and Israel. Murphy won't say it because he knows what'll happen if he does. He'll be primaried. The Democratic Party will spend ungodly amounts of money to defeat him, and Israel will spend whatever it takes to defeat him in his next primary and make sure that he is no longer the senator from Connecticut. That is how powerful that these organizations are. That is how powerful the Zionist lobby is in the United States. And I hate to say it, and I hate saying it, but we are an occupied government. When 3/4 of our government has to check with their AIPAC handler before they can vote on a bill, that is occupied. So not only are they occupying Gaza and the West Bank, they are occupying the United States Congress and the the White House as well. And the Doge Department, of course, because they occupy this platform that I'm showing you right here. Now, I'm going to rely on another couple of Indie Media Award honorees, so we're going to double it up here. Mint Press News, you know them, top outlet. Okay. Robert Inlakesh, 2024 honoree for one of the top journalists. And thank you in the words of the immortal Misty Winston, as Sean says.
We're fucked.
Okay. So the case against Mahmoud Khalil, how the Israel lobby fueled a campus crackdown, by Robert Inlakesh. Like I said, the detention of Mahmoud Khalil, a prominent Palestinian activist involved in organizing at Columbia University, is the result of more than a year of pro-Israeli think tank propaganda and lobbying efforts to tie students to Hamas and erode free speech protections in the United States. Since the first anti-war encampment at Columbia University last April, and let's not forget that that's where it started, a network of pro-Israel organizations, including lobby groups, think tanks, and private security firms, has worked to dismantle the student protest movement. Their influence has been evident in the rapid and coordinated response to suppress demonstrations. And also, let's not forget that Israel committed to spend $150 million in PR to stop this. Despite Secretary of State Little Marco Rubio's public claim that Khalil is a Hamas supporter, quote unquote, no evidence has been provided to substantiate that allegation. In fact, a White House official admitted in an interview with the Free Press, fuck Barry Weiss too, that the allegation here is not that Khalil was breaking the law. The Trump administration has offered no evidence of illegal or violent activity to justify its efforts to deport Khalil, a green card holder, or at least now a revoked green card holder. Instead, his removal appears rooted in political disagreement. Washington has made clear that any speech critical of Israel can be labeled as pro-Hamas and anti-Semitic without the need to substantiate such claims, which again is fucking insane. This absence of evidence has been a defining characteristic of the broader campaign, driven by the Israel lobby to curtail the First Amendment rights on college campuses. While Jewish student groups were among those leading last year's anti-war encampments, the Students for Justice in Palestine, SJP, chapters became a particular focus of political scrutiny. What a shock! A central figure in this push has been the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, a neocon think tank frequently cited as a source for alleged links between Hamas and SJP. The FDD's argument hinges on the claim that the American Muslims for Palestine, or AMP, a major supporter of SJP chapters, has ties to individuals formerly associated with charities shuttered for allegedly financing terrorism. In one such case, the Holy Land Foundation resulted in convictions that have since been widely criticized as politically motivated. Go figure. This is what they've been doing. The FDD first presented its claims publicly in 2016, but they failed to gain traction mainly due to a lack of substantive proof. Again, no surprise. Among his chief concerns was that AMP does not have to file an IRS 990 form that would make its finances more transparent. That critique is striking given that the Quincy Institute recently revealed that the FDD itself operates with, quote, dark money funding and holds a 0 transparency rating. Pot calling kettle black, baby? Yeah. You know, it's okay for them to not have transparency, but AMP certainly needs to have transparency. Well, because they're pro-Muslim, of course. In May of 2024, the Washington-backed Atlantic Council, and we know how neocon they are, suggested in an article that Iran was involved in the student protest movement. Insane. Corporate media quickly picked up on that claim and attempted to build a case around it, because of course they did. Narratives, folks. Yet, despite the steady stream of coverage, easy for me to say, none of the reports were able to muster any real evidence to back up their accusation. Alex Karp, we know him very well, CEO of Palantir Technologies and partner of Peter Thiel, a company with deep ties to the CIA, has taken up a public crusade to reshape discourse on college campuses. His rationale for urgency is blunt, quote, if we lose the intellectual debate, you will not be able to deploy any Army in the West ever, quote unquote. But they are losing the intellectual debate because you can't just strong arm and stonewall and silence everybody that criticizes you. Guess what ends up happening? You lose the argument, asshole. Safra Katz, the Israeli-American CEO of Oracle, and one of the highest earning women in global business, has also weighed in on the protests. What a shock that she would be a Zionist. She reports to Larry Ellison. When asked about the wave of student demonstrations, she framed the issue in starkly militaristic terms. Quote, the reason, in my personal opinion, why they're out there is because they think Israel is weak. While they're murdering, okay, let me finish her quote. They think the Jews are weak, so they stand up strong. If Israel regains its deterrence capability and America regains their deterrence capability and is strong, they will disperse like they always do. We've seen this pattern here in Israel. When the terrorists feel strong, they're out in the streets. And when Israel comes in hard, they're hiding under the floor, unquote. Wow, that is as disgusting a quote as I've ever seen. Sentence by sentence, okay? They think Israel is weak. While they're, again, no, they think Israel is murdering children, unarmed, defenseless children, and destroying city blocks and stealing the land. That's what I think. That's what they think they're doing. They think the Jews are weak. This has nothing to do with Jews. This is to do with Zionism. There are Jewish Zionists and there are Christian Zionists. Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth, Christian Zionists, not Jewish. All right. This is also, is America's not strong. America's shipping bombs to fucking Israel. How many 2,000-pound bombs do we need to send them to show our quote-unquote strength? How many bombs do we need to send to Ukraine to show our quote-unquote fucking strength? Tanks, drones, ammunition, you name it. And now soldiers too. What a disgusting piece of shit. Not only did Katz compare student actions in the United States framed as part of a resurgence of anti-Semitism, again, Palestinians are Semites, to terrorists, but the Israeli-American businesswoman has also contributed to both Donald Trump and Marco Rubio's political bids in the past. Of course she has. As CEO of Oracle, which owns OpenAI, Katz doubled her company's investment in Israel following October 7, 2023, because she's a piece of shit. The Anti-Defamation League, which, of course, has repeatedly accused U.S. student movement of anti-Semitism and supporting Hamas, while also being openly a hate group themselves, has openly called for the deportation of Mahmoud Khalil, because, of course, they have. Jonathan Greenblatt is a disgusting individual, president of the ADL. Pro-Israel groups insist that Khalil has ties to Hamas, yet even the Canary Mission, a site notorious for doxing pro-Palestine university students, could not produce evidence beyond his participation in a protest chant. Because now speech is considered to be violence? I guess if you're AOC. Are you saying that you're AOC Republicans? Huh. Interesting. Okay, chanting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, is apparently now against the law, even though they never really passed a law against it. The site argues that the phrase is pro-Hamas solely because Hamas leader Khaled Mashal has used it in the past. Well, by that, by that logic, anyone that has used any KKK phrase is apparently a KKK member or pro-KKK, right? One of the loudest voices behind the crackdown on campus protests is Trump's UN ambassador, Elise Stefanik. We know all about how and why and who's openly boasted about her role in forcing the resignations of 5 university presidents. Even Columbia University's decision to give in to pressure from pro-Israel lobbying groups didn't shield it from White House retaliation because it was the original place of the protests. So they had it wasn't about that. The administration still moved to strip $400 million in federal funding from the university, sending a clear warning to other institutions, as well as to the administration of that institution that they better get in line if they ever want it back, which they may or may not get. This multi-pronged assault on free speech, built on baseless accusations of Hamas and anti-Semitism, is now being used to justify the deportation of a permanent U.S. resident whose wife and future child are American citizens. Again, they are American citizens. The campaign it's part of a broader effort to erode the First Amendment protections under the guise of national security. There's only one issue, and that's that the First Amendment may not apply to green card holders. We got to check here. I got a whole thing about this in a minute, in a few minutes. All right, so again, Robert Inlakesh, go check him out. Indie Media Award honoree, 2024. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. Who else is telling you stories like this? Now, I wish it were all sunshine and daisies for Professor Mahmoud Khalil. However, I can't do that. I think some of you know Laith Marouf, who is with Free Palestine TV. Now, this is also a lesson in you cannot work with Zionists, even if you try, even if you're trying to do the right thing. And here's the funny thing. The case of Mahmoud Khalil is a perfect example of the limits of liberalism and collaboration with the Zionist empire in hopes of gaining some equity or change in the power structures. For those who don't know, Khalil is a Syrian citizen who collaborated with the imperialist plot against his homeland and worked for the UK embassy in London coordinating destabilization programs. That's like white helmet shit. He also worked in the NGOs in the USA designed to drive the Syrian diaspora youth astray from decolonization and into the arms of Wahhabi and Ikhwani collaborationist rule. So that's not great, okay? As for his role at Columbia University, he was a go-between, agreed upon by the Zionist administration and the Palestine liberation supporters, i.e., he wasn't a member of the movement and only a messenger. He was also against the Hens Hall movement and actions. So, here's Mahmoud Khalil, a man who sold his country to the wolves for a few measly dollars, who acted as a reasonable messenger of Zionist power to the Palestinians at Columbia, and all he got in return was a crappy t-shirt and to be disappeared by Zionist master in the White House. He didn't even get a crappy t-shirt, really. Moral of the story here, as an Arab or Muslim, no matter how much you suck up to the Zionists, they will never treat you as an equal human, and the more you suck up to them, the more they will humiliate you when you outlive your usefulness. We hope Mr. Khalil returns home safely to his family, but you should all know what you are supporting, and to do so in spite of his shortcomings, because his disappearing, even though he is a tool, fool, or even agent, signals that all Arabs and Muslims in the USA could be treated even worse. And there are some receipts. And I hated bringing that part, but I would be disingenuous if I didn't, because that is part of the story. And it's helping people form certain angles and narratives about him. And you cannot, lionize him necessarily. All right? You have to speak the truth and say the whole thing and all of it. Now, we're going to have a little bit of levity. They had a hearing in New York City. Susan Sarandon, the millionaireess op herself, decided to show up and show solidarity, which is just wonderful. And there's so many people that love and adore and admire Susan Sarandon, the wonderful, beautiful 70-plus-year-old millionaire Susan, who doesn't have to be out there, but she takes up causes of lefty persuasion and amplifies and advocates for them, and we appreciate it. She gets her little moment in the sunlight for sure, and her credit. But let's just not ignore our friend Jesse Jett, who also wrote a song about this almost 3 years ago, actually, called How Could You, Susan? So we're going to play that right now on the show.
I remember while the golden age, 2015, and feeling like the world would be okay, until Susan came along, and just to suit her selfish needs, she went and tanked the Hillary campaign. So you can go thank Susan for those nightmare years of Trump. You can thank her when he wins in 24. And if I had the chance, I'd ask why she won't cancel debt, or why she made inflation simply soar. I'd say, how could you, Susan, throw us to the wolves? Why'd you let those wildfires burn? to earn. How could you condemn us to a ruling fascist hand? And how much did they pay you for your part in Putin's plan? How could you destroy us with such reckless, cold abandon, missurrendering?
How could you? Incredible. That's the one and only Jetsy Jet, folks. Catch him on American Tradition every other Tuesday night on INN and on Friday nights on The Clip Show. Amazingly, he wrote that, like I said, almost 3 years ago. He predicted Joe Biden losing and, of course, Donald Trump winning in 2024. Why? And then he's supposed to shake his head for 30 seconds and tisk on the album version, but it hasn't made it to an album yet. Maybe it will make it to clandestine radio. Like I said, I wanted to mention something about green cards here. And so I'm going to lean on another Indie Media Award honoree for that, and that is Consortium News, who I adore. So this was from somebody I'm not familiar with, Gabriel Chin from The Conversation. They reposted this. Okay, and they said that green card holders' rights. As a pro-Palestine protest leader, Mahmoud Khalil faces deportation. Okay, and here's this professor listing 3 major differences between the rights of citizens and lawful permanent residents. Okay, so again, I thought this was very important to bring because we want to look at the actual law and what's going to happen here and not be surprised. So, Gabriel Chin writes, Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said that the government will deport lawful permanent residents who support Hamas and came to the U.S. as students with an intent to rile up all kinds of anti-Jewish student anti-Semitic activities, referring to the Palestinian rights protests at universities in 2024. Here's further Rubio quote, and if you end up having a green card, not citizenship, but a green card, as a result of that visa while you're here and those activities, we're going to kick you out. It's as simple as that. This is not about free speech. This is not about people that don't have a right to be in the United States to begin. This is about people who don't have a right to be in the United States to begin with, Rubio said on March 12th. That policy has now ensnared Mahmoud Khalil, a recent graduate of Columbia University and a leader in the Palestinian rights protest movement at school. Khalil, a Palestinian who was born in Syria, faces deportation after he was arrested on March 8th in New York City. The Department of Homeland Security said that the Secretary of State had determined Khalil's presence or activities in the country posed, quote, serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States. I don't know how they intend on proving that. But I also want to note here that it is misrepresented that he is a leader in the Palestinian rights protest movement, because he is the negotiator. He is the go-between between the leadership and the school. And I want to make that distinction. Khalil entered the United States on a student visa in 2022. In 2024, he received a green card and became a lawful permanent resident, meaning he has the legal right to work and stay in the United States. There are an estimated 12.8 million lawful permanent residents in the country. Khalil's lawyers say that his arrest and pending deportation are, of course, unconstitutional. And this is from the protest on March 10th outside the courtroom. In many respects, the rights of lawful permanent residents and citizens are similar, yet citizens and lawful permanent residents do not enjoy equal status under the law. This is really important to understand. This is how they're going to come at him. The Supreme Court and other courts recognize that lawful permanent residents have First Amendment rights to free speech, yet the Supreme Court upheld deporting lawful permanent residents in the 1950s based on their political activity, in particular, membership in the Communist Party. So, while lawful permanent residents may not be criminally prosecuted for their political speech or activity, what they say or write may well affect their ability to remain in the U.S. if the government determines that they are a security risk. Remember the language Rubio used. I'm a scholar of immigration law. Here are the three major differences between the rights of citizens and lawful permanent residents. Number one, like he said, you have limited political rights. Lawful permanent residents are people born in other countries who can legally work and live in the U.S. for as long as they like. They may enlist in the U.S. Armed Forces, apply to become U.S. citizens, and are legally protected against discrimination by private employers. States also generally cannot discriminate against lawful permanent residents, though states may require certain groups of people, such as teachers or police, to have U.S. citizenship. Between 1820 and 1920, non-citizens routinely participated in different aspects of government, including voting, holding office, and jury service in many states and territories. That's amazing. Voting. Non-citizens voting. These days, states and the federal government generally allow only citizens to serve on juries, hold political positions, and vote. With a few exceptions, such as voting in some local elections, permanent residents are not able to do any of these things. They don't get a vote for president. The distinction between non-citizens and citizens extends to other areas of life, such as public benefits. The Supreme Court has frequently stated, in the exercise of its broad power over naturalization and immigration, Congress regularly makes rules that would be unacceptable if applied to citizens. In practice, this means that the federal government, and to a much lesser extent states, do not offer public benefits such as Medicaid and other kinds of government support to lawful permanent residents and other non-citizens on the same basis as citizens. Now, they may offer it, but on a different basis. For example, lawful permanent residents must generally wait 5 years before becoming eligible for certain programs intended to support low-income people, such as Supplemental Security Income, SSI, and the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, otherwise known as SNAP. That's food stamps. Finally, this is the one that scares all of us. Unlike citizens, lawful permanent residents can lose their legal immigration status. Yes, Congress has enacted many grounds for deporting a non-citizen or stopping them from entering the country. Some courts have found that the U.S. government can deport a lawful permanent resident because of national security or terrorism concerns, even if the person has not committed a crime. That's where they're going to get them. The Trump administration argues that they can deport lawful permanent residents like Khalil under the 1952 Immigration and Nationality Act, which states that a lawful permanent resident can be deported if the Secretary of State has reasonable ground to believe that this person, quote, would have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States. Which, again, I don't know how you prove. How do you prove that this guy, this one person, has that kind of influence anywhere, let alone at a university unarmed, where there has been zero violence by students? The Trump administration had initiated deportation proceedings against Khalil on this ground. U.S. law also provides that any non-citizen can be deported if the Secretary of State and the Attorney General jointly determine that the person is associated with terrorism, and we know how Pam Bondi gets in line, or poses a threat to the U.S. Again, I don't know if they even need to prove this, or they can just state that they feel that way, and that's enough. In addition, the law says that an immigrant can be deported if they, quote, endorse or espouse terrorist activity or persuades others to endorse or espouse terrorist activity or support a terrorist organization, hence the Hamas stuff. But meanwhile, their support for HTS the last few years, no question about how they've been supporting a terrorist organization. Or even the Knesset, who's been bombing and murdering unarmed children for 75 years, really, but especially since October 8th, 2023. That's terrorism by its specific definition. No, that doesn't count. Still, lawful permanent residents are entitled to certain basic rights, such as retaining a lawyer to represent them in administrative hearings and court before they're deported. And they haven't even given them that. By contrast, the U.S. government cannot deport a U.S. citizen for any reason. Oh, but don't worry, the Trump administration is working on that one, I can guarantee. However, sometimes U.S. citizens are deported by mistake, quote unquote. And you can be sure that the people that they want to deport will be deported by mistake. Mistakes just amazingly happen. Indeed, the Supreme Court has found that while it is constitutional to execute a military member for desertion in wartime, it would be cruel and unusual punishment to deprive them of citizenship. Okay? So here are the legal grounds for deporting non-citizens. There have been few recent court cases testing the scope of deporting lawful permanent residents on national security grounds based on pure speech. In 1999, the Supreme Court ruled that if a person is deportable, they are deportable, even if there is some other reason that motivated the government's deportation proceedings, such as a suspicion that the non-citizen is involved with crime or terrorism. The Supreme Court also then held that the government could deport non-citizens for technical visa violations, even if the case was based on the government's belief that the non-citizens were associated with a terrorist group. This is not boding well for our friend over here. There's also some precedent arguing that deportation based on adverse foreign policy consequences is too broad and nonspecific to even be constitutional. Indeed, Marianne Trump Barry, the sister of the president, held this opinion when she was a federal judge in the mid-1990s. But Samuel Alito, then an appeals court judge, overturned Barry's ruling on procedural grounds in 1996. Interesting. Again, getting technical here and really legal mumbo-jumbo. For its part, the Supreme Court has occasionally held that very broad and indeterminate deportation grounds are void for vagueness, meaning so sweeping and imprecise that they are unconstitutional. But that's in the past, and that's not a Trump-appointed Supreme Court that is 6-3 Republican. Khalil's lawyers appeared with the U.S. government lawyers before a federal judge in New York on March 12th. Their goal, to get Khalil moved from internment in Louisiana back to internment in New York. That's the goal now. But that may just well be the beginning of a long haul for the Palestinian student. Courts have proved reluctant to second-guess security grounds rationales in immigration cases. For those reasons, cases like Khalil's may go on for years. While his baby is born, while his wife has to deal with raising an infant by herself, while the threat of deportation holds over their heads, while they have to shell out money for a lawyer that they probably don't have, man, it's a nightmare. Now, not only that, again, narratives are being formed all over the place, but I want to absolutely give credence and talk about the way that he was detained in the first place. Asal Rod, I have tremendous amount of respect for. She's phenomenal. Another journalist, Middle Eastern journalist. Seeing how Mahmoud Khalil was detained is unreal. A guy wearing an Avengers shirt from an unnamed agency says, "We have you." They refuse to give their names, and it seems he has no rights to be read while being arrested, all while his pregnant wife watches and records it horrified. And I'm not going to play the video. This is 2 minutes. Okay, we can play this one, I believe. Yeah, this is from Asal Rad and actually from his wife.
You're going to be under arrest. So turn around.
Okay,
stop resisting.
Okay, he's not resisting. He's giving me his phone, okay? He's not, I understand. He's not resisting.
There's no use for this. Don't worry about it. You're going to have to come with us. Don't worry. I'm coming with you. Don't worry. No one's resisting. No one's getting worked up.
You guys really don't need to be doing all of that.
It's fine.
Habibi, كيف بدي أتصل فيك?
Take Amy. Call Amy.
Okay. Hi, Amy. Yeah, they just like handcuffed him and took him. I don't know what to do.
8 months pregnant.
Okay. And what should I do? I don't know. Noor.
Let me ask. Literally disappeared. Is that a cop car?
Can we get a name, please? Can we get your name? I understand the lawyer is asking for your name.
Go over there. No, we don't give our name.
The lawyer's asking for your name. He's saying they don't give their names.
Oh yeah, that's right. They'll be taken to immigration custody at 26 Federal Plaza.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
They'll be taken to immigration custody at 26 Federal Plaza.
She said they're taking him to 26 Federal Plaza.
Did they never identify themselves even as ICE agents? Okay, he's got a badge on him.
Can you please specify what agency is taking him?
I would take a
please?
picture of that badge.
Excuse me. They're not talking to me. I don't know. I don't know. Excuse me. The lawyer would like to speak to somebody. Oh my God, they're literally like running away from me.
Yes, they are. Yes, Bad Cookies, that is illegal. That is correct. That is illegal. But who's enforcing the laws? Who's in charge right now? Unfortunately. Whatever they say apparently is the law. Now, again, all the narratives and everything going on. Now, I don't know why it's saying I'm not following Mr. Nico House, because I certainly am. Maybe I got unfollowed. But Nico House over at Hotspot made a video that I want to play. The dean of the department at Columbia University, where Mahmoud Khalil got his degree, is run by an Israeli spy, allegedly, whose job it was to surveil Arab speakers on behalf of the IDF. Yes, Mahmoud's dean was tasked by Israel to spy on people who fit his exact description. Let's watch this.
A professor at the center of the Columbia deportation scandal is a former Israeli spy. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm laughing because there ain't no such thing as a former Israeli spy. Now, if you're like me, you were curious as to why Khalil was singled out of all the people who protested and organized last year at Columbia University. You see, Khalil was actually a graduate of the university's School of International and Public Affairs and was abducted by ICE. But what you might not know was that the dean of his program is Karen Yari Milo, a quote-unquote former Israeli intelligence officer. And her job as an intelligence analyst was to surveil the Arab population because of her ability to speak Arabic fluently. I mean, this intelligence analyst is still so well connected that she was able to conduct an invite-only closed event for former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, which led to a protest of hundreds of people coming out, and the Jews for Peace at Columbia publishing on Instagram that the event should have been public and that they condemned the political project of Naftali Bennett. I don't know, man. I'm just saying. An Arabic-speaking Syrian former graduate student had a dean whose job it was to surveil his people. And it wasn't everybody who's been suspended. It isn't Jewish students who have been suspended or arrested or are being threatened with deportation. It's specifically the Syrian Arab protester organizing to protest the genocide happening in Gaza. And his dean had a job of surveilling his people. I just find that a little bit suspicious, don't you think? Like I said, there's no such thing as former Israeli intelligence.
Shout out to Hotspot. Go give them a follow. What are they now? It used to be at Hotspot. I don't know where they are now, what they're at now. But at Real Nico House, give him a follow. I'll put that up for you, Cookies. I'll put that up. Careful with that statement, Nico, because the same could be said about military intelligence, you know, like you, former, because I believe that Nico has admitted it in the past that he also is former military intelligence, potentially. Certainly Tulsi has. I also want to go to Glenn Greenwald on this one, who I'm not a big fan of, honestly. He's okay, but he's also never met a billionaire whose money he wouldn't take. So I'm not a great fan of his. And he was through the door on Rumble. He did, again, it's conflicting when it comes to Glenn. But he had a good point here that drowning yourself in the legalities of the rights of green card holders is disingenuous. And even there, it's beyond obvious that Khalil's views on Gaza were the motivator. He's speaking to his right-wing audience here. The Trump world is filled with extreme Israel loyalists who explicitly vowed to use power this way. Now, he's not saying that he isn't. He's kind of neutral, it seems, because he knows that all the money behind him certainly is pro-Israel and he does not want to fuck with his golden goose. But he will call it out for what it is. And I give him some credit for that. What's really going on here is desperation. The reason so many, and again, he loves to use the woke stuff, the anti-woke pundits began obsessing on American campuses is fear of the growing boycott movement, which took down South Africa's apartheid regime. Censorship is a reaction to fear that they're losing public opinion, which they are when you murder children who are unarmed and you drop bombs on them. It tends to hurt public opinion about you as a country and as a people. That's just me. Thanks, Glenn. Now, this is part of a long thread. The pro-Israel right is 100% embracing all of the core premises long used to justify liberal censorship. It's so transparent as to be self-evident. They're pretending it's only the Khalil case to excuse it as just against green card holders, but it's far more sweeping. None of this is new. Israel critics have long been a prime target of censorship. In 2014, a University of Illinois professor condemned Israeli mass bombing of Gaza and lost his job. The Jewish student group said they couldn't be safe with a professor who used hate speech. Sound familiar? He said, I could literally spend all day documenting such cases where Israel critics in the U.S., many Americans, lost their jobs for that. Since October 7th, it's far worse. Laws have been passed and executive orders issued to punish Israel criticism. It was a key factor in the TikTok ban. There's a lot of narratives, and people are trying to use this guy as a scapegoat. They're trying to make this guy into something that he may not be. They're trying to make him out to be a terrorist sympathizer, which he's not. They're trying to make him out. He is a university student, a grad student who graduated, I guess, but he's now a green card holder who had the legal right to go find work in this country and to protest on his university campus, where his wife was still attending. This man had absolute right to be doing what he was doing and to say what he was saying. And now the administration and MAGA, which has now been turned into MIGA, Make Israel Great Again, has now been manipulated to advocate against this man's free speech, which if the Biden administration had done the exact same thing, they would be screaming bloody murder from their roof, from every rooftop they could find, that this were wrong and be on Khalil's side. But, of course, Miriam Adelson said so. So Trump's in line and everybody else is in line too. All right, this is all illegal, and it may get overturned in the courts, maybe in time, maybe, but all the judges are in Trump's pocket, and it's not looking good. I'm saying, it's sad. It's not looking good for any of us, and it scares the hell out of me as a dissident reporter and journalist. To some degree, we're all at risk at this point. We'll almost certainly be censored for that as well. So, if you are able to and a means, take care of your family, take care of yourselves, take care of your friends, but take care of INN and fund the independent media you want to see. Cash App, $, Indie News Network, code-fee.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network, and you can also do it at INNnewsletter.com monthly or annually, but please do it at one of the other three places.
Who are these people?
But I do want to talk about Bukele and
he doesn't hate it.
Ecuador. No, I do, because I know we want to get to boats.
Ecuador?
I did it again. Not Ecuador. El Salvador. You're
welcome.
Thank you. See, I told you I was, and so funny because I wrote it last night, and I said I'm going to do that on the show tomorrow. I can't
do that. I can't mess it up. I'm going to do it on the show.
I said I'm going to do it on the show, and sure as shit, I just did. Okay, I got to give props to Russell Dobular. I found this on my Facebook today. Looking through all the memes that'll get me disappeared to a prison in El Salvador. So, and he's got a nice dab rig there too, it looks like. And it's shot. And he's
good. It's clean too.
It is clean.
Nice and clean.
I read an Extreme Arturo one earlier. I've got another one here. Trump, Bukele, and an ugly history in the making. And he talks about El Salvador, not Ecuador, but El Salvador. Sorry, Ecuador. I apologize. Before the Trump admin ignored a judge's order, there were already myriad issues with sending migrants to El Salvador's Terrorism Confinement Center, or CECOT. Ignoring the court's decision is beyond alarming. It throws the nation into a crisis as top officials like Trump's so-called border czar, Tom Homan, keep challenging the courts by saying things like, "We're not stopping. I don't care what the judges think. I don't care what the left thinks." What they're intentionally ignoring is that the U.S. Constitution offers protections for the migrants who were sent to El Salvador. Accusing them of being in gangs for tattoos that refer to a popular reggaeton song by a Puerto Rican Trump supporter on for example, speaks to the dubious claims of gang affiliation based on tattoos. They're profiling migrants, in this case Venezuelans, and labeling them as terrorists for nothing more than culturally relevant tattoos. In one case, a Venezuelan migrant was prepared to prove he had no gang affiliation, yet he was treated as a terrorist anyway, as the president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, found joy in Trump undermining the U.S. Constitution, the oversight provided by the judiciary, and nearly all societal norms. He don't give a fuck, because for him, it mirrors much of what he's done in El Salvador. Bukele remains popular for getting crime under control, but has raised many red flags due to his ignoring of the country's constitution in what many say is an effort to consolidate power for himself and his New Ideas Party, which also includes Max Kaiser's funding behind him and all of Bitcoin. Last year, Bukele was elected to a second term despite the El Salvador Constitution prohibiting re-election. And in the process of incarcerating more than 1% of El Salvador's population in hard labor prisons, he's also targeted his critics. El Salvador has been in a state of emergency or martial law for more than 2 years. During that time, many civil liberties have been ignored, as reported by Amnesty International and other human rights groups. But Bukele's wild popularity holds because the country is much safer than it once was. So much so that the Biden administration toned down the rhetoric against him with not just because of his broad popularity, but his willingness to work with the U.S. to curb migration. What a surprise. As Trump, Bukele, and high-ranking U.S. government officials gloated about illegally sending migrants to inhumane prisons in a foreign country, the Trump admin admitted in court on Monday that many of the people sent to El Salvador did not have criminal records, but only because they haven't been in the U.S. long enough, suggesting that the criminal behavior is inevitable because they're Venezuelans, of course.
Oh, of course. Pull that video up at 8:47. Speaking of prisons.
Well, before I do that,
you can just mute it.
This is the sworn declaration about the fact that they had been taking people, innocent people to rot in a prison in El Salvador, including a professional soccer player tortured by the Maduro regime who entered the country legally to seek asylum and has no criminal record in either country.
Yeah.
Awful. All right. On top of that, there's this one. All right. Trump just sent 29-year-old Venezuelan migrant Mervin Yamarte to a gulag-type prison in El Salvador, okay, because his crime has a tattoo that says, "Strong like my mother." Trump's goons initially claimed that that's proof that he belongs to a gang, Mervin's family fiercely denies the accusations, saying that he's an innocent family man. Trump is invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to do this, which was last used to intern 110,000 Japanese Americans in prison camps in World War II.
Of course.
When they saw a video of Mervin in that prison, his wife said, quote, "My heart broke in a million pieces because my husband isn't part of Tren de Aragura gang. Okay, I couldn't believe they sent him there. When I saw what I saw in that video was a face of pain and fear." Oh, yeah. All right. You want me to bring up this video at 8:47, so I got to go and do that. Did you happen to queue it up or no?
Yes, I did. You open it up, and then we're gonna skip forward in a bit to like 14:53. So. But, like, this is literally the location that he was sent to. I think it's called CECOT, right?
Yeah, they're inside that prison.
This is how they have to urinate. That many men, that's their only two bathrooms, is in the corner in front of everyone. Right? So, not great. That's the water they get to bathe in.
That's where they shower.
All of them.
Plastic dippers in a single shared basin. There's no running water in the cells. Prisoners have to rely on one blue barrel for drinking water. Where they sleep is these metal bunks, no pillow, no mattress. Each prisoner receives just the bare essentials, just a white sheet with a uniform, socks, slippers, and a towel. That's it.
They keep the lights on 24/7.
Yep. 4-level bunk beds stacked tightly. All right. Shaved every 2 weeks by personnel. Long hair, even beards, are unhygienic, and they can hide sharp objects. Right. Look at how many dudes are in like one thing.
So, yeah, this is the hole that you get put in. So. Super lovely place. It's a concrete box, right?
Completely
this
dark.
Lovely concrete box here. Completely dark. You get this cistern and a toilet.
Where you bathe and poop. And then
incredibly inhumane.
Goes up to the ceiling and he shows you, they pan up and they show you that the only source of light, now he's got the room.
It's like one little hole.
That's a water bin, their only supply of water. All right, that's the toilet, and it looks like there's still stuff in there, gross, bedpan type of stuff. It looks recently used and dirty, suggesting it was recently used, gross. All right.
So that's the hole. That's your only fresh air.
And fresh air, right. That's the hole.
But anyway, that's enough of this terrible place.
Yeah. So that's this awful place. So there's little doubt that some gang members were sent to El Salvador, but evidence is beginning to surface that shows many were not. These broad roundups and dubious claims of gang affiliation are leading to many U.S. immigrants here legally being targeted, along with some U.S. citizens, for nothing more than looking Latino. One lawsuit alleges that ICE created an administrative warrant after arresting a migrant who didn't have one out for him, making one up after the fact. Using tattoos to target non-white groups and list them as gang members has been a problem for the U.S., across the U.S. for decades. Agencies like CBP, Homeland Security, and ICE embrace the strategy local and state and law enforcement use and have taken it further than ever. For agencies under the purview of DHS, it's a growing practice used to dehumanize and villainize immigrants. Like he said, he showed this Aaron Reichlin Melnick, talking about these men were sent to a hard labor in a Salvadorian prison with no due process, including a tattoo artist seeking asylum who entered legally, a teen who got a tattoo in Dallas because he thought it looked cool, and a 26-year-old whose tattoos his wife says are unrelated to a gang.
Yeah.
When contacting the Department of State, about the lack of evidence to claim that any migrants were gang affiliated, a spokesperson would only say, "We don't comment on pending or ongoing litigation," presumably referencing one or all the myriad cases that the administration is facing in court. Despite not commenting, the admission in court by acting field office director Robert L. Cernhass already shows that they have no evidence to back their claims. During a press conference Monday, State Department spokesman Tammy Bruce, and she's a Zionist lunatic ex-Fox News host, she responded to a question about issues surrounding invoking the Alien Enemies Act by reiterating the White House's position, saying, quote, "The White House has been very transparent. Caroline was very clear this afternoon about their approach. Clearly, they feel that this is something they want to litigate, and they're going to, without authority or jurisdiction." This follows a press release from Marco Rubio. Then, meanwhile, just days after Irish Prime Minister Michael Martin visited the White House for the annual St. Patrick's Day celebration, the admin invited Conor McGregor, the Irish mixed martial artist fighter. McGregor was found civilly liable by an Irish court last year for assaulting a woman at a party in Dublin in 2018 and has a history of other allegations against him. We're going to get to that in a second. McGregor's record of making xenophobic comments made his racism-laden rant unsurprising, but it was beneficial for the Trump administration's anti-immigrant campaign. On Monday, the DOD issued a press release about Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's meeting with McGregor. Why? He has no official business or position in Ireland now, but they're discussing how the U.S. and Ireland are both struggling with the effects of illegal immigration. According to the release, McGregor, the rapist, described the issue for Ireland as a threat of destruction from within. Allegedly, the rapist.
Yeah, bullshit.
Never
he's
won.
A fucking right cunt, as the fucking Irish would say.
Never one to miss an opportunity to propagandize and display his unhealthy obsession with the U.S.-Mexico border. Hegseth, the drunk, chimed in with his conflation of immigration in Ireland with the United States. He employed the widely debunked 20 million migrants conspiracy theory and made comparisons of small towns being transformed by immigration in both countries. Garbage. I'm not even going to read his quote. Hidden in the background of all this is the news about the U.S. sending a destroyer to sit off the U.S. coast near the border. As reported last week, the military buildup at the border is getting more alarming every day. A press release from DOD says U.S. Northern Command, or NORTHCOM, deployed the USS Gravely, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, to the Gulf of Mexico on what it says is a scheduled deployment. While the press release claims the destroyer will be involved in the interdiction mission of the many of the drugs that are coming in, according to the Joint Staff Director for Operations Air Force General Alexis Grinkovich, the growing U.S. military posture at the U.S.-Mexico border should be noted as the rhetoric about immigration gets more intense and the actions by the administration get more extreme. This mirrors what the fuck happened before Nord Stream blew. We had operations in that area in the Baltic Sea. We sent the Kearsarge in there. The minute they left, things go boom. How about that? Go figure. And again, support Arturo and decolonized journalism. Subscribe for free or upgrade to a paid subscription. Please support independent media. We do need it more than ever. I don't see many people reporting this from a Spanish perspective, a Latino perspective. I greatly appreciate Arturo's perspective on this one. Apologies there, Arturo. Good dude, good writer, and he needs our support. We need to support guys like this. Again, like I mentioned about that letter and about sworn declarations about innocent people rotting in prison in El Salvador.
Who are these people?
Thank you to whoever did that. Appreciate you, fam.
That's Kamishwari Kate.
Thank you again,
please
Kate.
listen to my latest playlist at Mixcloud, Third Transition Media / Leftover Music Without Borders.
Nice. Decolonize your mind. Yay, thanks, Kate.
Chat.
Yeah, drop that in the chat. Trump admin last night admitted that many of the people sent to do hard labor had no criminal record. Stunningly, they argue that because they don't know much about them, that justifies denying due process. Wow. Unbelievable. Excerpt comes from this declaration, which claims that ICE did careful vetting of each person to determine that they were a gang member, then fully admits that they don't know for sure whether they are because they don't have good information. Okay. Yeah. And so we are certainly demonetized for that, but mentioning, and I don't want to read through it because it's a long article, but Alan McLeod over at Mint Press News. Alan is an Indie Media Award honoree, as is Mint Press. All right. He wrote a long piece about McGregor going to Washington and exposing all of that, his racism, his violence, his history. Okay, Ireland resisting that far-right surge so far. Read that for sure and support Alan in his work and read Mint Press News. Absolutely. If you're able to, Cash App, $, Indie News Network, co-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network. That's with an IE. Support independent media. We need it more than ever. I love you all.
Who are these people?
God. We're up to the portion of the program I did not really want to do. It's Eid. Eid is the end of Ramadan, I believe. It's a big celebration. It has children in their Sunday bests. It's, they've been fasting throughout the daylight for, is it 28 days? Yeah. And now it's over. The ceasefire's over, and the bombs have been dropping. And on Eid, Abu Bakr Abed says, on Eid day, we're being slaughtered while Muslims prepare the nicest sweets and clothes. I'm absolutely enraged. And the Israeli military says a ground offensive has begun in Al Janina, a neighborhood in southern Gaza's Rafah. And I'm going to bring some other horrifying stuff, and I'm really sorry to have to do this, but they're doing this, so I have to. This is a Palestinian kid. Okay, I'm gonna pause this for a second. This is a Palestinian kid. Screams for the world to feel his pain after he and his family were injured in an Israeli airstrike on the first day of Eid. Eid Mubarak, everyone.
خليه يصور خليه تعال صور احكي هاي لبس العيد هاي لبس العيد هاي لبس العيد هاي لبس العيد تصور تعال احكي طلع هاي العيد الله ستر لك الله ستر لك تعال احكي
So that's how I woke up. I think it was yesterday morning. It might even been this morning. Wait, when was this posted? March 30th. This morning. I woke up this morning to seeing these type of videos. I have a question. Yes.
What do you say when fuck Israel isn't enough? More importantly, what do you do? Because this shit gotta stop.
Well, first you don't stop reporting on it because they're trying to murder everyone who is. And then you have to try to stop the people that are doing it by stopping the weapons manufacturers, by stopping the ships at the ports, by hurting the pockets and doing BDS and hurting the people that are funding this and arming this. I'm going to show some other horrific images here. Sarah Wilkinson. The Israelis targeted and killed a group of children while they were playing in a camp west of Khan Yunis after they put on their new Eid clothes. And I don't want to show up too close-ups because I don't want to have this stream pulled for graphic violence or promoting violence, because we're not promoting violence. We're showing what Israel did. Sarah also shared that as Muslims around the world prepare to celebrate Eid, Israeli troops topple the last standing minaret to symbolize the destruction of Islam in Gaza. Isn't that nice? Who are the terrorists again? This place is leveled and destroyed. Remind me again who the terrorists are.
Are we the baddies?
He was martyred alongside his mother this morning, wearing Eid clothes. He was alive this morning, looking forward to the joy of Eid, but the occupation stole those moments of happiness from him and the rest of his life. This is a friend of the network. How fucking depraved do you have to be to bomb starving people living in tents? It defies human understanding. I was shaking with rage this morning about this shit. But it wasn't just this morning. Indie Media Award honoree and friend of the show, Ricky Hale, Council of State Media, posted one of the worst headlines I have to read all year. The IDF has just decapitated another Palestinian child. The 40 beheaded babies mob have fallen strangely silent. I've just witnessed the harrowing footage of a distraught father kneeling over the remains of his son who was decapitated in an Israeli strike. He's literally holding the kid's head.
Holding the head.
The
talking
father
to the child still.
Stroked his son's cheek.
Yeah, I saw this.
I'm not gonna be able to make it through. These sons of bitches. I mean, they blurred it out. I have the original without it blurred, but I'm not going to show it.
Yeah, I saw it.
It's no. As Mahmoud, the father, was speaking, a voice can be heard from the distraught onlookers saying, half of the rest were injured, and yet Zionists will justify all this bloodshed by telling you Palestinians love only death and then lie about the victims. So what lie are we going with here? Are we going to pretend this boy was Hamas? Fake a membership card like we did with Hussam. By the way, watch Reef and Collins' coverage about the... fucking kids.
The 3 dead journalists and the kids, 18-year-olds.
You're going to say he was standing over a tunnel holding a rock? What would justify killing your child, please? Let me know when you thought of something, because I'm sure they'll think of something. I've not heard Zionist excuse for this murder yet. They don't even need him anymore, but sickeningly, they have been mocking the father and child on social media. We're talking about the sickest of the fucking sick here. When we were falsely told Hamas had decapitated 40 babies that had apparently justified genocide. Now, for the people on the podcast, I just scrolled past 2 tweets from monsters the other day. One of them saying to, quote unquote, just tell them Hamas won. That'll cheer them up, unquote. And the other one...
Nazis.
And the other one saying, how did they miss the father? Israel needs to step up its game. Wow. Watching a father hold his son's decapitated head in his hands after Israel murdered him, and this is what they say. Bot or not, with a blue check or not, those people, they're irredeemable.
I mean, we talked about 3 young men who were definitely men at that point because they grow up far too young in Palestine. Like, Beitar comes in, tells us there's no journalists there. Only Hamas. Fuck you. This is the kind of shit they fucking try to pull.
These motherfuckers.
So...
The world will not act.
Yeah,
it will not even impose sanctions on the genocidal regime. It is Palestinians who must face sanctions, who must go without food, water, and electricity. You might be punished for speaking up for Palestinians, but you won't be punished for gloating about Israel's beheading children. The police won't even look into that. Just know this isn't the first time that Israel has decapitated a child. It's not even close. It's actually a regular occurrence.
Not even the second.
And it hasn't once received condemnation from any Western media or politicians. These child decapitating strikes are being carried out with the help of course, the Royal Air Force and the U.S. military, who are conducting surveillance flights and picking Israel's targets. If you're British, your tax money paid for this child's murder, instead of feeding our disabled citizens. Does that make you feel ashamed? Because it should.
It should. Absolutely, it should.
Whatever military objective you're trying to achieve must immediately stop if it involves decapitating children. The moment you decide children's lives are a worthwhile price to pay, you become a monster, and we all understand this. And you can't say, well, they're raised to hate Israelis. Why might they be doing that? Why might they be? Could it be because they're raised in a prison
I think Israel's
with
doing
no
a good job on their own on that,
with no right of travel or passports or clean water or 24 hours of electricity a day or? Make no mistake, if Hamas had just decapitated a child,
but we gave them greenhouses that one time, Indy.
Oh, and they destroyed them and filled them with concrete. Because they thought they were poisoned. Make no mistake, if Hamas had just decapitated a child, anyone applauding it would be banned from social media and arrested for supporting terrorism. They would be expelled from university, and if they were foreign, they'd be deported. But when Israel decapitates children, you're portrayed as the good guy for supporting it. The people who disagree with you are punished. And Ricky is frightened right now for his safety in the UK, and I'm frightened for Ricky's safety in the UK. So support Council of State Media. Support Council of State Media. We need them more than ever. I love Ricky, and I really appreciate him and his journalism. But it doesn't end there, folks. I wish it did, but Kyle Anzalone, I only went to Indie Media Award honorees here. Again, Abu Bakr, who works with EI, and we're going to have some Sanaa Saeed coming up in a little bit too. But here's Kyle. Here's a report from the WAPO. Israel is planning a more aggressive invasion of Gaza. Now, this was a week ago, so this was likely the plan.
Who are these people?
Thank you. The planned Gaza.
Hey, appreciate it.
The planned Gaza invasion. Thank you, Sean. I caught you that time.
Yeah.
Thank you. According to WAPO, Kyle writes, the Israeli military is gearing up for a major ground operation in Gaza that could last months or longer because they haven't killed everybody yet. Last week, Israel broke a ceasefire and hostage deal with Hamas and conducted large-scale bombings in the Strip that killed hundreds. The Post spoke with current and former Israeli, and by the way, we covered that extensively on this show last week. Go watch it. The clips that are up on How Do We Miss That? And Indie Media Today everywhere and Rumble everywhere. The Post spoke with current and former Israeli officials who explained that, quote, the new and more aggressive tactics, unquote, would probably include, quote, direct military control of humanitarian aid like they haven't taken already or blocked, targeting more of Hamas's civilian leadership and evacuating women, children, and vetted non-combatants from neighborhoods in the West Bank where that's not Gaza, to humanitarian bubbles that they then drop bombs on after they make everybody sleep in tents. The official said those who are not evacuated would face a siege that is a, quote, more intense version of a tactic employed last year in northern Gaza, unquote. That's where they literally shot anything that moved. More intense than that. How are they going to more intense than shoot anything that moves? In 2024, the Israeli military carried out a version of the general's plan, an outline for ethnic cleansing drawn up by retired IDF generals for northern Gaza. And they cut the...
we covered that. Go look at INN News.
Yep.
The secret plan, Israel's secret plan, something like that.
Yep. And it was on the New Year's Eve, the Christmas special that we did on the Palestine coverage. I included that for sure. The plan again called for the complete evacuation of all Palestinian civilians south of the Netzarim corridor, not just north, but now south of the Netzarim corridor, a strip of land controlled by the Israeli military. Under the plan, if civilians don't leave, they're to be treated as combatants and killed either by military action or starvation. Ain't that nice? Again, that's a war crime. Civilians, if they refuse to leave automatically, they're a terrorist, so therefore they must be killed. How is that not a war crime?
Yep.
It is. The Post then reported the more brutal strategy reflects a change in military leadership, and I think you guys covered this last week on INN News, that they just changed the names and the faces and then put the more monstrous policy in because you already knew who Ben Gvir and Smotrich were, and now you've got even more, was it Eichmann and Kaufman, or I don't even remember the guy's name. See, like I said, they just changed the names, and now you don't even remember who they are. The policy gets worse. The new policy is more in line with the view of Netanyahu. Herzi Halevi stepped down from the post. He was replaced by Eyal Zamir, who's even more fundamentalist and fanatic than Halevi was. Amir Avivi, a former deputy commander of the Gaza military division, explained to the Post that Trump's vigorous support for Tel Aviv gives Israeli military commanders more faith that they'll have the equipment needed in Gaza to level everything in sight and rebuild the Trump hotels for Jared. Quote, now that there's new IDF leadership, there's the backup from the U.S., and there's the fact that we have enough munitions and the fact that we finished our main missions in the north and can concentrate on Gaza. Avivi said, the plans are decisive. There will be a full-scale attack, and they will not stop until Hamas is eradicated completely. You mean the Palestinian people are eradicated completely. We'll see. As a reminder, since October 7th, Israel has decimated the Strip and killed at least 50,000 Gazans. Still, Israeli and U.S. officials have said that Hamas has returned to its pre-war strength. So all of this was to get nowhere. All of this murder, death, and destruction, to have them right back to the same number they were, that's awfully convenient because it gives them the excuse and the chance to continue to go in and bomb people. Huh.
But Indy, Trump brokered the most ceasefirest of ceasefires.
Yossi Cooperwasser.
Peacemaker.
All right. The Post noted that the IDF would not be less restrained in order to defeat Hamas. No, they would not. All right. Yossi Cooperwasser, who's a former senior IDF intelligence official. There are no former. And head of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security think tank, meaning that he's now just a spy here, explained, quote, there's less opposition now with Zamir and Katz. They're more ready. The government was committed to removing Hamas from power. The security establishment wasn't happy with this idea. They were trying to focus more on military assets and less on civilian assets. Because once you remove Hamas from Gaza, the IDF would have to rule Gaza. But there's nobody left. They're just going to rebuild. They're going to turn into a massive construction site. They're going to do what they did to Lahaina. Put a bunch of fences and a bunch of fun and cover it all up. And you're not going to see it until they take the wraps off of it. It's going to turn into a construction site. Hard hats and legal documentation only. While the Post report says the IDF plans to wage a counterinsurgency in Gaza, Katz said Tel Aviv will expel the Palestinians and annex the Strip. So again, what kind of messaging? How are they going to expel them? Where are they going to expel them to? There's nowhere to send them to. You're going to kill them all. Quote, I've instructed the IDF to seize additional areas in Gaza while evacuating the population, and in West Bank too, and to expand the security zones around Gaza for the protection of Israeli communities and IDF soldiers. What? Meaning that the security zones around Gaza into Gaza. On Saturday night, the Israel, because nobody's gotten outside of Gaza. That's ridiculous. For the protection of the communities. For what? Nobody. Gaza, Hamas never broke the ceasefire, and they all admit that. Okay?
Yeah.
No Israelis have been killed since the start of the ceasefire, and Trump and they all agreed to that. Still, none. Since breaking the ceasefire and hostage deal, though, Israel has resumed large-scale bombing in Gaza, and additionally, Israeli troops have attacked Rafah in southern Gaza, the Netzarim corridor in central Gaza, and of course, displaced 40+ thousand people already in West Bank, including Jabalia. Fuck Israel again. This is the other story that I had to unfortunately report on with Israel this week. This is Sanaa Saeed, and others are going to talk about this. The Israelis surrounded, captured, and executed 15 Red Crescent civil defense workers. Those are ambulance drivers, and only one body had been retrieved at the time. There's no coexistence with an ideology and its adherents like this. They don't want to coexist. None that isn't a lie, at least.
No.
And yet, this is the scaffolding. The thing that is built and still props up Western civilization. This is the reason every institution in the U.S. and Western Europe willingly crumbles, folds itself inward in service of this genocide. The bones of Western civilization see its reflection in a pool of Palestinian blood. Look, all right. This is from Al Jazeera and Hind Cowdery. Civil defense saying, again, the Israeli army buried the bodies of the martyrs at the site of the attack, making it difficult to locate them. The scenes at the scene were horrific and confirmed the deliberate targeting of ambulance and civil defense crews by the Israeli army. The Israeli army destroyed 5 Palestinian Red Crescent and civil defense vehicles and buried some of them after targeting them. What happened to the Palestinian Red Crescent and civil defense crews was a massacre that accounts to another war crime. And again, I've only been really talking about literally documented war crimes here. Again. Breaking execution of the 16 ambulance crew members by Israeli forces. Horrific massacre. Following coordination with the International Red Cross, civil defense teams entered the Tel al-Sultan area in Rafah, south of Gaza. It was confirmed that the IOF had executed all 16 members of the missing civil defense and Red Crescent teams who all disappeared 4 days ago. Let me guess, they are all Hamas. They were found buried near the barracks. Additionally, all Red Crescent ambulances and civil defense firefighting vehicles at the site were deliberately destroyed. Because they can't have any rescue equipment.
Well, they found them deliberately burying, Palestinian bodies with bulldozers and
earlier today,
hiding their murdered.
I was trying to capture the latest. Red Crescent Society confirmed 11 more bodies found in Rafah, 6 identified as its members and 4 with civil defense. The 11th body was still being identified. Any news on the hostages? Ask Bibi, because he's scuttled the deal multiple times in order to save his ass. Fuck that. They don't want to save the hostages. Israel has tried deliberately multiple times to not get the hostages. And then we've got this Mondo Weiss article talking about, I can't. You guys talked about it Wednesday. Go read it. How Western media silence enables the killing of Palestinian journalists. 208. Yeah. And there they are. But I can't with that one. Here's another one. Abu Bakr Abed, who we started with. This is Dr. Sidwa. Now, finally, thankfully, Dr. Mark Perlmutter was heard from. He and Dr. Sidwa were in a building or in a hospital that was attacked and bombed by Israel. And they continued to work. Those guys are monsters. They're incredible. Like, in the best way. They're incredible.
Also,
go ahead.
In the words of Eva Bartlett, where is Dr. Hussam?
Oh, I forgot to, again, bring the tweet, but he got 6 more months in detention.
You got 6 more months of detention. For what? They don't say. Like, fucking.
Now, Dr. Feroz Sidwa, who we covered last summer, delivered the letter to the White House courageously, and he has been back and forth. And he, with Dr. Mark Perlmutter, were there. He sat down with Press TV. Mark Perlmutter is home. He actually sat down briefly with Jose Vega, I saw. But I wanted to take this minute 29 from a Press TV interview and play this.
The hospital cannot purchase new material. It can't receive new material. And it's not just humanitarian aid that's not being allowed in. Nothing is being allowed into Gaza. When a person is wounded in battle, and then they are being cared for by a medical professional, the doctor but also the patient are protected. So it's a double crime. It just doesn't matter in the Western discourse, in the United States, in Europe. You're not allowed to just say the simple and obvious truth. The Israelis are deliberately destroying a healthcare system with the backing of the United States and Europe. You're not allowed to just say simple things that are obvious to anybody with half a brain can figure it out. You ask a 10-year-old kid to look at the evidence, they'll tell you exactly what's going on. The only way that this can come about is because Palestinians, Arabs in general, but especially Palestinians, are just not seen as human beings. But I also want people to understand that we are committing crimes in Gaza. Everybody, people use the word complicit. They say America is complicit in Israel's crimes, but this isn't correct. That implies that Israel is committing the crimes and we're just in the background or something. The U.S. and Israel are committing crimes in Gaza together.
Yep.
It's American airplanes, it's American helicopters, it's American bombs. Even the tanks, these vaunted Merkava tanks, they're basically made in the United States. So I don't accept that my government has to be involved in committing crimes against people who have done us no wrong.
Man's a hero. Runs into battle zones to fix kids without anesthesia, without proper equipment, and to do all he can. Because they killed all the Palestinians.
That's some of the hardest stuff, by the way. The nurses coming back and talking about their stuff about, like, try giving a kid a fucking amputate a child with no anesthesia.
They killed all the doctors there. So, or kidnapped them and are torturing them like Hussam Abu Safiya. So it requires international doctors to go in there because they're running out. And of course, with all the bombs that are being dropped and all the injuries that are being inflicted by Israel, you need doctors to take care of the injured. They don't really want you to have that, so they're destroying the ambulances, and they're destroying the healthcare workers, and they destroy the roads, so the ambulances, even if they did exist, couldn't get there. I mean, all of these are war crimes, and nobody does anything about it. And really, it's going to be up to China.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's going to be up to China. They are the other major world power that could stand up and say, enough. We're done. They're done with this. We're not going to allow it anymore. We're not going to permit it. And we will start arming and funding the Palestinians.
Africa, hopefully, parts of it.
Yeah, but Africa...
South America.
Africa needs a trading partner. They need someone. Yep. China Belt and Road isn't established, and they're enough yet, unfortunately. Yep. And again, I hate doing that this every time.
Russia should fucking be doing shit already.
They're selling out. They're selling out to Israel. They've already started to. And what a surprise. Somebody sent, I think it was 7 Seas actually posted a thing about and showing Putin sitting across the table from the Lubavitch Chabad guys.
BB.
No, not even. No, the Lubavitch Chabad representatives and rabbis. They're all part of they're all part of it. So, I'm sorry, everyone, but fuck Israel. This is awful. Fuck Israel. And they can't be allowed to continue to do this.
Yeah.
And we are also demonetized this channel if you're able to. And of means, please don't give to the platforms. Do it via Cash App, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network or paypal.me/Indie News Network as a friend and family. And that gives us no fees. We like having no fees because that puts the most money in our pocket. Otherwise, we're paying the banks and we're paying the multi-billionaires and we're paying the hedge funds and they're taking their cut. We don't need them to do that. They can get their cut from somebody else. Thank you so much. Support independent media, kids.
Yes, sir.
We need it more than ever. We love you, fam.
Who are these people?
Jason Hickel, he's a professor, college professor, wrote an article that I thought was also really interesting, reminding people that no, Israel is not a democracy. The only democracy in the Middle East is not a democracy. More than 11 million people are denied the right to vote for the government that controls their territory. So how can you call that a democracy exactly? Okay. He starts off by saying that U.S. politicians like to say that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, but it's not. Not by a long shot. In fact, it functions as one of the most undemocratic countries in the world. Israel exercises total control over the West Bank and Gaza. These territories have no actual sovereignty. The West Bank, with 3 million people, is subjected to military occupation, which is illegal under international law, let's not forget. And as for Gaza, which had 2.1 million people, now we think it's down to as many as 1.5 maybe, is also under military occupation, according to international law, as Israel maintains direct control over its airspace, its coast, and its land borders, controlling everything that goes in and out. How is that not an occupation? They'll deny that they occupy them. The 5.1 million people living in these territories do not have the right to vote over the government that determines virtually everything about their lives. And their basic human rights under international law are unenforced and regularly violated with impunity. On top of this, there are another 6 million Palestinians who've been forcibly removed from Palestine and who exist as stateless refugees with no rights within their homeland whatsoever. So what's going on here? Well, apartheid. Many people get hung up on the apartheid analogy because when they think of apartheid in South Africa, they think of segregation and unequal rights among citizens, and they say this sort of thing doesn't happen in Israel. It does. But this is known as petty apartheid, and it was only a minor part of the apartheid system in South Africa. The real action, grand apartheid, had much bigger designs, and this is where the analogy is strongest. Grand apartheid was the process of reshaping territorial boundaries and citizenship. The idea was to forcibly remove the African population from the majority of the country's territory, literally bulldozing their houses and loading them into trucks, does it sound familiar, and dump them onto tiny fragmented chunks of land called Bantustans. Now, then you put a border around each Bantustan, give people citizenship there, give it a flag and a coat of arms, and set up a parliament. Taking this approach, ethnic cleansing, the apartheid regime shoved most of the African population into enclaves comprising just 13% of the land and denied them any rights of citizenship within the white territory. Now, you could consider to replace white with Jewish. White people justified this by saying Africans had rights in their own countries, the Bantustans. But of course, the Bantustans were fake. They had no real power, no economic sovereignty, no independent militaries, etc. The apartheid regime controlled their borders and trade. Israel was established in 1948. The very same year the apartheid regime was established in South Africa, and has followed the grand apartheid playbook chapter and verse. The Nakba began the process of shoving Palestinians off their land, out of their homes, and either into the enclaves that today form Gaza and the West Bank. Those are the stands where 5.1 million people live within borders Israel controls, or into neighboring countries like Jordan and Egypt and Lebanon and Syria, where 6 million Palestinians live as stateless refugees. The process of ethnic cleansing continues today. And of course, what's the result? More than 11 million people, again, that's just Palestinians, are hived off from the realm of rights within their own territory and deny the right to vote for the government that controls it. Minority rule by Zionists is declared by democratic. They declare it democratic only because it excludes the majority of the population. Calling this democracy is an extraordinary farce. There's no democracy within apartheid. Apartheid must be abolished. The 11 million must be free to return to their land and homes. Their homes don't exist anymore, but at least their land, and must enjoy full rights of citizenship within a fully democratic polity, including the right to vote for the people who govern them. That's a democracy. It also bears noting that while the U.S. liberal discourse implies that they want to see democracy in the Middle East, nothing could be further from the truth. For the past 60 years, the U.S. has propped up authoritarian regimes in the region in order to maintain its interests, has sought to crush liberation movements for struggling for democracy. As Samir Amin pointed out, the U.S. and Israel actively reject genuine democracies in the region because democratic Arab countries would quickly tip the balance of power in favor of the Palestinian cause. Hey, how about that? That's amazing. The claim that Israel is an apartheid state is not a fringe opinion. Every major human rights organization has taken this position, from Amnesty International to Human Rights Watch, which both also have their own issues. And in 2024, the ICJ issued an opinion stating that Israel is in violation of Article 3 of CERD, which condemns and prohibits racial segregation and apartheid. Israel is an apartheid regime. Apartheid is recognized as a crime against humanity in the Rome Statute of the ICC, and it must be abolished. But Israel runs the world, so apparently that's not going to happen right now, maybe, but I don't know why we shouldn't be fighting for it. And I think some of us and a lot of us are marching in the streets of New York City and saying, don't cancel NATO is not necessarily the way to do it. Right?
Hands off NATO! Hands off!
Well, wait, hands off Medicare.
Hands off NATO!
Hands off all the things we will never fight for. That's what the Democrats are saying. Right?
Yeah.
This one.
Taking ketamine because I think it could really help you.
Thank you, Shelly.
What?
Left Voice is another Indie Media Award honoree. And Otto Fors is one of my more favorite writers over there. He and Wolfgang Mendelbaum wrote an article that quotes Netanyahu.
Wolfgang Mendelbaum.
That quotes Netanyahu.
Names are funny.
And this is why I brought this. It was really just for the headline. We'll read the article, but it was really just for the headline that Netanyahu said that Gaza will be Israeli or it will not cease. It will not exist. He continues his plan to annex Gaza. Again, with
how about new?
Yeah, except that this is why Miriam.
Crazy Dutch bastard.
No, he's an Israeli bastard with Polish background, but
close enough.
This is
close enough to Dutch.
This is what Miriam Adelson paid for to get Donald Trump as president, and the deal that Donald Trump made was to allow them to completely annex Gaza and the West Bank. So Netanyahu is making plans to annex Gaza, supported by a new circle of ministers, monsters, and advisors, even more extreme than the previous ones, determined to wage war until Hamas and the enclave itself are completely eliminated. Except that we've seen the military assessments that say that you will never get rid of Hamas. Never. Because what will happen is the rest of the world you can't eliminate Hamas everywhere else around the world. You can't bomb every hotel that somebody that might be Palestinian and supporting that cause. Or maybe they will, but I don't think they can.
Ugh.
You could outlaw religion and most of these sex crimes would disappear in a couple of generations. But we don't have time for rational solutions.
Church of Carlin, it's Sunday. It's Sunday, folks. We got to go to church. So, Otto
speaking
and
of sex
Volka,
crimes in Israel, who showed up there?
Right?
Who showed up recently?
Rusty Rockets, baby. He's got those Rusty Rockets.
Andrew Tate, soon to follow.
Rape charges and Israeli trips go together like peanut butter and jelly.
Go together. You got sex crimes in my Israel. You got Israel in my sex crime.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, fucking what a disgusting world we live in.
1 week after the resumption of the genocide in Gaza, the death toll is catastrophic. Nearly 800 dead, including a large number of children. I saw another headless one them running down the street today, blurred out.
Yeah, I know, dude. Fucking just awful.
And they'll deny all this. Yep. Access to humanitarian aid has been completely cut off for more than 3 weeks. The IOF are bombing hospitals and homes and civilian infrastructure. On Monday, Israel announced that it had attacked more than 100 pickup trucks under the pretext that they could be used by the Al-Qassam brigades. With the resumption of negotiations stalled and the imperialist powers continuing to openly support Israel's massacres in the enclave, the future looks bleaker than ever for Gazans. The new Army Chief of Staff, Eyal Zamir, remember that name? He's the new
Beelzebub?
He's the new Gallant. He said that he wants to complete what Israel has been trying to do since October 2023, eliminate any Hamas presence in Gaza. This means an escalation of indiscriminate bombing and the systemic destruction of civilian infrastructure, whatever is left. But above all, this goal is now compounded by the threat of an unprecedented military deployment. An unprecedented military deployment because there's so much there for them to worry about. According to the Wall Street Journal, plans for a massive ground invasion have been drawn up and could be implemented very quickly. The army has already regained control of the Netzarim corridor and is conducting incursions into Gaza City and the northern Gaza Strip in an effort to expand its buffer zone. That's a nice way to say its murder zone. It's also present in Rafah, Khan Yunis, as well as the Tel Asutran refugee camp, which is surrounded by the IOF after a massive bombardment that left more than 50 dead. And this week we saw bombings in Rafah and Khan Yunis. The goal is to smother Hamas, quote unquote, by occupying large swaths of territory and maintaining a significant military presence there, leaving it nowhere to retreat, choking it off everywhere they can. In earlier phases of the quote unquote war, you mean the massacre, the army typically withdrew after capturing an area, giving Hamas the ability to reestablish itself. This time, the goal is to gradually reduce any room for maneuver, eliminating each pocket of resistance piecemeal. This would be accompanied by a gradual and systemic destruction of Hamas's entire tunnel network. Secret tunnels that a lot of which Israel built.
Shit.
By the way, I noticed they didn't mention that.
Secret tunnel.
This exclusively military strategy risks being rejected by the Israeli opposition and a large segment of public opinion, which would initially prefer a political solution, that is, the resumption of negotiations to secure the release of the remaining hostages and a ceasefire, even if it means resuming the war to settle the Palestinian problem. Wow, that sounds a lot like what they used to call the...
That sounds like a final solution.
A J problem, right?
The Palestinian problem that requires a fucking...
Modern problems require modern solutions.
But the new war council,
final ones apparently,
centered around Israel Katz, that's another one of the names you need to know. I believe he replaced Ben Gvir, and Eyal Zamir is taking a much more radical line than the previous one. which already was extremist.
Pretty fucking radical, right?
According to them, the quote-unquote defeat of Hezbollah, the fall of the Assad regime, and the fact that the Houthis are facing incessant U.S. bombing now gives them, thanks U.S., now gives them free hand to achieve what they want, what they have so far failed to accomplish, the total elimination of Hamas, which, of course, the U.S. intelligence community has said they'll never be able to do. Along the same lines, the IDF has intensified its strategy of targeting senior Hamas political staff. Now, it's funny how they haven't even mentioned a civilian death in all this. This is just about their intention.
Just say
about
seniors.
Right? Right.
You know?
Since the resumption of the genocide.
Citizens, that's who they plan on targeting.
Several central figures in the Gaza government have already been eliminated, including the enclave's prime minister, Hussam al-Dalish, as well as his presumed successor, Ismail Barhoum, also killed with a justice minister, the interior minister, the finance minister, and the head of Hamas's security agency, Sinwar.
Yeah, we killed him, but trust us, this guy was horrid.
Right. So, but they should negotiate. They've killed all the people they negotiate with. Anyone who comes to negotiate ends up dead.
And pray I don't alter the deal further.
Right. But beyond the cabinet rhetoric, the plan, as Haaretz reported Friday, aims for the total occupation of Gaza, accompanied by the establishment of an Israeli military administration modeled on the one in force between 67 and 94. One of its central missions would be to organize the expulsion of the entire Gazan population in accordance with the ethnic cleansing plan promoted by Donald Trump. Yes, promoted by Donald Trump. Initially, Gaza's 2 million inhabitants would be confined to a small humanitarian quote-unquote zone, which of course they continuously bomb. Yes. Where food aid would never exceed the minimum calories necessary for their survival. That's called a starvation plus diet, and Israel's had Palestinians on that for the past 2 decades already. The aim? Israel's full annexation of Gaza. As L'Orient de Le Jour summarizes,
Nazis. I hate these guys.
Before Israel Katz, no Israeli official had gone so far with regard to Gaza. There were threats to destroy it, depopulate it, occupy it, which was done, but never to annex it. The taboo has fallen. Gaza will be Israeli or it will not exist. However, before he can carry out his project, Netanyahu will have to deal with a series of contradictions. Israel's mired in an unprecedented internal crisis, compounded by a major political crisis. 73% of Israelis want the prime minister to resign, a figure that has increased since his attempt to remove the Shin Bet chief. Meanwhile, a mutiny of reservists is underway. Exhausted by the war, many now refuse to continue living the horrors of Gaza. 18 months of genocide, just too much for them. The project of totally eradicating Gaza is possible thanks to the unconditional support Netanyahu enjoys, first from the Biden and then the Trump administrations, but also from the European powers, which support and shamelessly participate in the genocide, especially the spy flights that Keir Starmer has been promoting and providing, likely free of charge.
Yep, accurate.
The cynical refrain, repeated ad nauseum, of, quote, Israel's right to defend itself, unquote, finds its logical conclusion here, the realization of genocide and annexation. And this was originally published at the end of March in La Izquierda Diario, which is the Argentinian version, the Left Diary. That's what La Izquierda Diario stands for. Left Voice, again.
You better say Free Palestine.
That's right. Indie Media Award honoree, Free Palestine, you bet. I will say it. This speaks for itself. Targets.
Yep.
Had to bring that. I saw it and I'm like, Red Crescent, press, babies, mothers, grandmothers.
Mothers. Yeah.
Targets.
Free Palestine.
And we get to Rafah. which is now completely laid to waste. Rafah in southern Gaza before and after U.S.-made bombs paid by American taxpayers and non-taxpayers, paid by American citizens and non, were dropped by Zionist terrorists on Palestinian natives. You are all complicit in this genocide. We all are.
Are we the baddies?
Yep.
That's the same main road.
I remember when Rafah was a red line. I remember that.
That's the same main road.
Yep. It's fucking crazy.
Fuck Joe Biden. Fuck Blinken. Fuck Sullivan. Fuck all these people that did this. Kamala Harris. And of course, Netanyahu and all the Israeli genocidal fucking maniacs. That still, this isn't even enough for them. They want more. They're going to escalate the attack even more. Because this isn't enough. These fucking lunatics. Monsters.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know, we talked about the Red Crescent workers and the horrifying story that happened to them. 15 of them murdered by Israel after going and trying to recover, and then Israel shooting at the people trying to recover their bodies, that they had buried the rescue trucks. And now we have cell phone footage from one of the aid workers as they're being fired upon. 45
Lights
seconds.
on the entire time.
This is horrific. I'm sorry to do
Clearly
this.
marked. Ambulance insignia.
Hey, مرمي.
They're lying around scattered. They're everywhere.
There's no God but God.
Gunshots are heard for a full 5 minutes on the video.
Correct.
Saeed Mohammed Morandi.
But they said they were acting suspiciously, these ambulances. Then they rescinded that, said they made a mistake. Oopsies.
Just another Israeli lie that they won't be held accountable for. Just another Monday.
No.
And then we have Abu Bakr.
You can't handle the truth.
Israel has bombed the gate of Al-Aqsa Hospital. I don't even know what that looks like at this point because they've already bombed it how many times?
Yeah. It's tense.
Killing 2 people and wounding others. The 2 are my cousin and his child.
Alhamdulillah.
These motherfuckers.
Well,
this is a 21-year-old kid. This is a 22-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Having to
and
deal
then
with...
they bombed the journalist tent.
Yep.
I had to watch a man burned alive today. Again.
Now, I also wanted to mention Abu Bakr, posted the other day about food prices. If they're even available per kilogram, $7 for tomatoes. We're not even paying $7. Yep. $8 eggplant, $90 a kilogram for meat or fish.
$30 a liter for oil is what the Intifada article had this week.
$11 a kilogram for rice. I mean, that's a basic staple, and they're running out of it. By the way, if you can find it,
$1.43 at Walmart,
and you need to pay in cash to afford this, which means the prices are doubled.
Yeah. Doubled. Yep. So,
and they continue to not let the aid trucks in, and then gaslight and say that they are letting aid trucks in, and that they don't know what you're talking about because aid trucks are flowing in. What do you mean?
They've not had water drinkable forever. It's been like 97% undrinkable water for like
weeks,
a decade now.
Well, yeah.
Right.
Well, yes.
So, yeah, I know.
Again, It's been 100 days since the abduction of Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya. All right, and this was on April 6th, so that was today. Let this man go. But I meant to bring this last week. It was actually came out last Saturday. Reef, you shared this. Dr. Hussam's lawyer, he was denied legal representation for over 45 days, brutally beaten during interrogations, suffering broken ribs and severe injuries, and held in solitary for weeks. Israeli authorities allegedly tortured him to extract confessions and fabricate a security case, and now he is going to be held for another 6 months.
He was done access for more than 45 days. After these 45 days ended, the prison administration started making, I missed that. I'll go back a bit and catch up. Started making excuses. Of course they did.
They said the earliest available
appointment.
Beginning of March.
They also delayed the visit for some time.
Second visit
was
March 19th.
On the 19th. Yep.
That lasted 17 minutes. It was clear there was a decision or obstinacy from the prison authorities that they did not want us to sit with him for a longer period. However, during these 17 minutes, we still managed to discuss all the violations, his entire interrogation period, and all the torture he was subjected to. Unfortunately, what I understood from him is that when he was held at State Haman military camp, where he stayed for about 14 days, he underwent between 4 to 5 interrogations. During these interrogations, he was severely beaten by a group of soldiers who unfortunately assaulted him even while being transferred. Even on his way to interrogation, he was beaten. On his way to clinic, he was beaten. Unfortunately, they broke about 3 or 4 of his ribs in the chest area.
Jesus Christ.
He was punched hard in the eye, causing an injury. He was also placed in solitary for a period until he was transferred to Ophir prison. In Ophir prison, he stayed for 25 days in solitary in a cell measuring
solitary,
right, in 1.5 meters by 1 meter. Wow, that's like a 3 by 4.5. That's like a literal, like you could barely move.
It's a fucking box, right?
There too, he was subjected to severe beatings and psychological pressure. To the extent that his body became physically exhausted, he was physically drained to the point where the prison administration forced to bring in doctors to treat him. He underwent several interrogations inside military camps and prisons. These interrogations were conducted by the Army or intelligence services. They were extremely harsh on him during the interrogations. He was subjected to severe mistreatment. One of the main reasons for this mistreatment was that he openly challenged the system. He refused to evacuate Kamal Adwan Hospital. They wanted to make an example of him. They aimed to intimidate the rest of the detainees throughout and to send a message that anyone who dares challenge them or even thinks of defying them and refusing to obey their orders, and those in the army, that is the fate that awaits them. They tried to turn his case into an ordinary security file to charge him with an indictment, and they were hoping to extract confessions from him, which is also very important to him, is the issue of medical staff, medical teams, the doctors, the wounded. He's always been and remains, this has always been the people and the patients, one of his top priorities.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he's not alone. He's not the only doctor detained in prisons. We have hundreds of medical professionals,
nurses, surgeons,
detained inside Israeli prisons and Israeli military camps. He's only one. They were taken from inside Gaza, from hospitals.
Yep.
Now we're going to get into just by the numbers, because I really like Steve Semler. And I believe this is a free article where he breaks down Israel's war on aid workers. All right. This was from the other day. Polygraph.substack, StephenSemler.com, STEPHEN, Semler. He's, again, good analytics numbers guy, just looks at the raw numbers. All right. And what he said was that by the numbers, let's look at the war on workers, on aid workers. If this incident generates enough public backlash, Israel will claim without credible evidence that the aid workers were our militants. What a surprise. For now, its excuse is that the ambulances were advancing suspiciously toward IDF troops. And that the Guardian, per the Guardian, the movement of the ambulances had not been coordinated with the IDF in advance. Right. Okay. But the Israeli military stopped acknowledging notifications through the humanitarian notification system, the process by which aid workers alert warring parties of their intended movements so they don't get shot at during the ceasefire.
Yeah, who owns that? Peter Thiel?
Right. Israel's intent with this move was clear: deny Palestinians life-saving aid by making the risk of carrying out humanitarian operations too high, and it worked. Save the Children, for example, scaled back its operations in Gaza by 80% after Israel withdrew from the system. The Israeli military's systematic killing of aid workers serves the same objective. Per a former colleague of mine in the humanitarian sector, quote, the targeting of healthcare workers is deliberate. Israel wants to diminish the aid response capacity so organizations of their own accord stop working. See also making conditions so intolerable that Palestinians self-deport. This might sound familiar. There is also plenty of forensic evidence to support these comments, and the numbers on humanitarian worker deaths speak for themselves. He says, since October 23, I estimate that Israel has killed about twice as many aid workers, 426, as the rest of the world combined, according to my analysis of data from the Aid Worker Security Database, cross-referenced with media and other reports. During that stretch, Israel killed humanitarian workers in Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, and Yemen, and injured at least 3 aid workers in Syria, in addition to the 164 it wounded elsewhere from October 23 to April of this year. Share the following chart on social media and you'll likely get a comment along the lines of aid workers are terrorists, parroting an apartheid state's genocidal logic. And remember, we just read about what an apartheid state Israel is. One that turns international law and morality on its head is certainly a choice. One that the commentator had plenty of time to think about as they painstakingly mashed their sweaty, clunky, inbred fingers onto the keyboard to churn out that vile remark. Would have been easier for them to just keep quiet. And here are the numbers. 640 aid workers, 426 from Israel alone, 217 by the rest of the world, which is still gross.
Yeah.
Okay. The methodology is that, and you can read about it there. I'm not going to get into reading it, but bottom line is Israel has killed 426 aid workers in addition to the 208 journalists, in addition to blah, 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 in addition to the scholars, the teachers, the dentists, the everything else that they've murdered in addition. But specifically, aid workers. Literally, systematically attacking the healthcare system. Thus, concludes our Fuck Israel segment for the evening, thankfully. Sort of. I mean, of course, everything has the looming overshadow of Israel funding all of it. And we'll get to Zionist Bitcoin.
You motherfuckers.
We'll get to Zionist Bitcoin, Golden Monarch in a little while. Because I know Golden Monarch going, fucking Zionist Bitcoin. That's his thing. Well, before saying fuck Israel.
Acquisition is greed is eternal.
Yes, we know. The Ferengis. The Israelis, these Ferengis, which is which. Anyway, Dana Saeed, we know her, we love her, she's fantastic. Support and follow her. This is also interesting. The Israeli military is one of Microsoft AI's biggest clients, with that relationship deepening during some of the worst Israeli bombardment of Gaza during this genocide. This is a Muslim Microsoft employee calling out the CEO of Microsoft AI, who is a British Syrian, not Muslim. Mustafa Soliman, may your name never be forgotten, and may the blood on your hands of Palestinians forever stain your skin. So Microsoft employee disrupts 50th anniversary and calls AI boss a war profiteer.
50,000 people have died, and Microsoft powers this genocide in our region.
Thank you for your protest, I hear you.
Your Syrian family know about this, Mustafa.
I hear your protest, thank you.
Yeah, slap those papers.
You are war profiteer.
I hear you.
Stop using AI for genocide, Mustafa. Stop using AI for genocide in our region. You have blood on your hands. All of Microsoft has blood on its hands. How do you all celebrate when Microsoft is killing children? Shame us all.
Thank you. I hear your protest, thank you. Okay.
I hear you.
I hear your protest, and I'm going to do absolutely nothing about it.
I
Thank
hear you.
Thank you. Fuck you.
Shame.
That belonged there.
Shame.
Shame. Shame.
Shame.
Yeah, nice job, lady. Absolutely. Yes, Cookies. I agree. She did a hell of a job. I wanted to bring that. That there are brave people working in these organizations standing up. Now, she's worked there for how long? And I don't know how silent she's been, but he walked into that meeting. She was invited to that meeting. They didn't think that she would be a problem to invite her to that meeting. She chose that moment to stand up, which I appreciate.
I hear you.
But at the same time,
we see you.
How long was there silence before that? Again, she's Muslim, and I can't really. I'm not trying to pass judgment. I'm not, but your protest doesn't increase my portfolio. That fuck that fuckwad. That's right. Yep.
We're sorry. We're sorry.
We're so sorry.
That's all you're gonna get. That's what you're gonna get.
Sorry.
That is that the coffee? Is that when the coffee company moves into South Park? That's one of my favorite episodes.
No, that's the BP episode.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah, we're sorry for ruining your environment, right?
We're sorry.
So
we're sorry.
For saying shit like that, we get demonetized. That's why we ask you to please support the media you want to see and fund the media you want to see.
Do it.
With a Cash App at $Indie News Network if you're so inclined and you have the means and you find some bucks between the couch or you digitally find a couple dollars. ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network. That does help. INNnewsletter.com is the way to stay in touch with the network on a daily basis. Support independent media, kids. We need it more than ever. Love you all.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Mwah. Ciao, baby.
No! We just fucking lost the stream!
You can't keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your heads. Why play civil if you won't listen? To 50,000 died, and now we know our mission. We form a militia, make Congress a prison. No, I play civil when all these dead won't make you listen. What's more American than slaying your oppressors? What's more American than liberty or death first? God, I thought we were founded on abolishing the tyranny of those who would starve a village all to live empirically. And I regret that I have only one life to give for my cause now that I can see the cause so clearly. See, I want our leaders, regardless of party, to fear me.